Welcome to Mindless Entertainment. It is I, Jesse Milestone, coming to you on this Friday with both good news and bad news.
I have a really bad feeling about this.
Where people were just walking around, just jizzing force all over the place. He looks like he has been drinking soy from his mother's teat. Wrap yourselves in, guys, because we are gonna get mean!
I got him! Great kid! Don't get cocky!
Welcome to Mindless Entertainment. My name is Jesse Milestone. You are here for the Matriarchy, which is why I'm joined, of course, by my best friend, my co-host, the lovely, the talented Anna, that Star Wars girl.
Hello.
She's so awake. She's been awake for like 30 whole minutes.
No, I've been awake since like 4 this morning. 4 or 3.
Oh God! So the opposite problem this time. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like when I need to go to bed.
So she'll be asleep 30 minutes after the stream is over, and then sleep for 12 hours. So
there we go.
I could use a good 12-hour nap. That sounds good. That sounds good for me. Words. Oh yeah, guys. The Super Bowl happened on Sunday. Some of you watched it. Some of you didn't. Some of you cared. A lot of you didn't either. But if you want to hear me yell about it, I just put that video up like while we were in the green room chatting. I was like, finished publishing. And thank you, Rebels. Wait, thank you. Anyway, words. So that video is up because in case you guys don't know, I have over a decade of experience refereeing at a very high level in fencing. And fencing happens very fast, and we learn how to see things very, very quickly and minutely in the blink of an eye. And I am utilizing that experience in my approach to how I feel about the way the last few minutes of Super Bowl 56 were officiated. And it's passionate. It's 13 minutes. It's yelling. It's informative. It's rude, especially if you're a Rams fan. And you should check it out. The link is already in the chat, but it's just in there. So just go to my channel. It's there. It's stuff. Anyway, that's what's up. That's the newest. That's the latest. Valentine's Day happened. There's an adorable picture of Jeff and I on Instagram. You should all go like it. Anna, how was your Valentine's Day?
It was good. Was that the photo that I took? I can't remember because I saw it on your Instagram and I was like, did I take that one? I don't know if I took that one.
The one I just posted?
Oh, did you just? I feel like I saw one.
Like yesterday? I posted one yesterday or something.
Yeah, it was something about Valentine's Day. It was you and Jeff in the wine cellar.
Yeah, no, that was a brand new one from the wine rack at Morton's.
Oh.
We like taking pictures in front of wines. Oh, remember how upset I was they did not have that
one wine that you wanted.
They had it at Morton's in fucking Ohio of all places, and we got it, and it was that I took a picture of that, dude. That was probably the most special part where they
You know what? I should have noticed that I didn't take this because you're wearing a different outfit.
True that. Was I wearing red though? Or no, blue. I was wearing blue with the Hobbit. Yeah, I was wearing blue with the Hobbit. Yeah. No, Central Otago Pinot Noir. Yeah, everyone, thank you for the compliments. This is my new backdrop. I might just sit down here and let you guys enjoy it. It's so
cute. I love it.
Isn't that fun? It's called, the title of the piece is Chase Your Dreams. I'm like, yep. We had to get it because Shipancake, his favorite animal is a dolphin. I know an orca is not quite a dolphin, but we're like, it's Shipancake riding on a whale. It's like Shipancake riding a dolphin. It's the greatest thing ever. And so Shipancake a dolphin.
So cute.
So I might just be a fixture. Actually, there you go. Just put myself in the bottom third here. That's aesthetically pleasing, right?
There you go. I feel like I need to.
You should go to the top opposite corner. We'll be symmetrical.
No, I'm gonna be short like you. Let me get this.
How funny
there
it is
when
I'm. There you go. Yeah, that's perfect. How funny is it when I'm the shorter one?
Your head still looks bigger than mine, but I think it's because you're closer to the camera.
Yeah, I could lean back. I could do that. I can get cozy back here. Wee. What's a dolphin? Alejandro Cervantes. Go check out the Shipancake channel, and he will tell you all about what a dolphin is. If you look up Shipancake the cat, we had a couple of videos. We're gonna go back to doing that eventually. You'll learn all about dolphins. It's great fun. It is great fun. What is up, Alejandro? Dr. Coffinails is here. Longevity. Greg Kirby. Doug 209. Andy McCallum.
I painted Dr. Coffinails' eye yesterday.
Say what about Dr. Coffinails?
I painted his eye yesterday.
Ooh, cool. I know what his eye looks like.
So do I. I painted.
I mean, obviously. Thank you, Anthony Wayne. That's very sweet. Excuse I burps. Yeah. So Alejandro wants to know about endorphins. Words. So the Super Bowl dropped a couple of things like new trailers. So Anna, have you you got a chance to watch the Rings of Power trailer?
You mean the Lord of the Downgrades? Yes, I did. There's a reaction video up on my channel. If you guys didn't see it, go check it out. Yeah, I watched it.
Lord of the Dear God, how did we do better CGI than this 20 years ago? That's like
I mean, some of the shots were pretty. They did spend a lot on their environment designers. I will give them that. The shot of the mountains and the waterfall was beautiful. I'm like, you couldn't find somebody a little bit more ethereal to play Galadriel. Also, you want to know how many times I've been called a racist for criticizing this at all? Like, too many to count at this point. And I'm like, just give the fucking dwarf bitch a beard. She's a fucking dwarf. The female dwarfs have beards.
That's a perfect in right there. That's your social justice in right the fuck away. We've already referenced the fact that female dwarves have beards. It is known. I honestly thought the CGI for a lot of the motion, the action and stuff looked terrible. And even though some of the landscapes looked pretty, there was you could distinctly tell when they were CGI and when they were organic.
Yeah, you could.
That's a problem. When you look at Isengard, when you look at a wide shot of Isengard, can you tell when it's CGI, when it's model work, or when it's props? In the original Lord of the Rings movies.
It's been a while.
Because I can't. Even I've only watched them in the Blu-ray cut once, so I've only watched them in that quality one time, but the bazillions times I watched them on DVD, because that's the one thing, the entirety of Isengard is one of the few set pieces that was CGI'd. The tower is CGI'd into the landscape. It's built as a model in certain shots, and obviously when they're on the ground, they're using actual sets, and it is indistinguishable. It is beautiful, passing one to the other. The CGI in the original Lord of the Rings is integrated flawlessly into the landscape. You can clearly see the digital mapping in this show, and it's so you talk about downgrade. It's such visually, it's a disappointment. It looks big and cool, but compare it, like put them side by side. It's like when we watch the original Star Wars versus the prequels. Yeah, some of the CGI still holds up in the prequels. Some of it looks cool, some of it looks flashy, but nothing compares to the real deal. And that ages in a way that the rotoscope blaster shots in A New Hope don't. And it does do a 9. Does it have budgets gone? I mean, that's one of the articles we're going to go through is for $1 billion show, why does the new Lord of the Rings trailer look so cheap? And that was
I would say maybe because they're not done with it, since that's just a teaser, and so it might look good when the actual show comes out, but that's giving them way too much credit.
I agree. I mean, let's dive into this right here, actually, because I think this for me was one of my biggest complaints, because this isn't a CGI issue. This isn't an issue that's going to be finished in rendering. This is a costuming and makeup issue right here. This doesn't look finished. This doesn't look complete. This looks like I mean, the face is so washed out. I mean, you're literally, again, $1 billion to make this show. There's no reason you should have a shot here that's so completely washed out that the features get completely lost. When you couldn't, I don't care what elements you're dealing with, what green screen shit you're adding on here, you should be able to make them look like a person here.
Can we just talk about how this is so beneath Galadriel too? Like, she would have found a better way to do this.
Yeah, like, what is even happening? Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess we're supposed to accept that this is a younger Galadriel, but the thing is, second age Galadriel is still not like super young, brand new Galadriel. Second age Galadriel is still fully formed Galadriel. I don't see her running around in chainmail. And like you said, it's like you can't, just because you're trying to argue it's the younger version of themselves doesn't mean you can completely change Lando Calrissian or Galadriel's backstory and how they act and who they are. There are fundamentals about their character. How does this pictured here? It took me forever to realize. Like, everyone's like, oh, they must have pictured Galadriel. They must have shown Galadriel in the trailer. We know they showed Galadriel in the trailer. Where the fuck was she? Oh God, that? Like, how am I supposed to accept that? Yeah, look, it's Galadriel in Game of Thrones. Thank you, Optic Racer. How am I supposed to accept that this becomes fucking Kate Blanchett in the next in the trilogy?
Doesn't make any sense, does it?
It does not. None of it makes any sense. So let's see what else they have to say about this. Beside a vast waterfall, a woman dangles precariously from a frozen cliff. As the wind whips around her, she leaps and drives a golden spike into the ice. That was the CGI that hurt me. That leap. When she looks up towards the camera, we know in an instant she will be all right from the look on her CGI smoothed visage. There's no danger because nothing here is real. The only place our new hero looks likely to fall is deep into the uncanny valley. Yep. For audience members who may not be aware of what the uncanny valley is, it's when human features, it's when you're dealing with features that look, it's a space between human and not human, where something is that shouldn't look human looks unsettlingly human, or something that should look human looks unsettlingly not human. It's that in between space. So faces that aren't fully rendered, animals.
Like video games get this a lot, where it's like almost real, but it's not, and it's kind of off-putting to some people.
That's where, like, that's Cats. That was the big criticism of Cats, where it was like that the Cats lived deep in uncanny valley. It's uncanny because it's true. No, Doug, it's uncanny. It's uncanny because it's so realistic, but it's missing a couple of key points that keep it from being purely realistic. So your brain can't quite, it keeps trying to fill in the gaps, but it can't quite reconcile what it's seeing. So yes, the trailer for Amazon's much anticipated new series, Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, hit screens during the Super Bowl this weekend, giving fans an early glimpse at exactly what the world's first billion-dollar television show looks like. The answer? A cutscene from Final Fantasy computer game. Mm-hmm. It's hard to conjure up a sense of jeopardy when your characters, in this case Swedish-born Welsh actor Morfydd Clark's young Galadriel, have ended up looking like one of Mark Zuckerberg's creepy dead-eyed meta-avatars wrapped in a billowing cloak of special effects. Sure, royal elves aren't necessarily supposed to look human, but you'd think after spending all that money, she'd at least look like she has a pulse.
Dude, this is an awesome article. It's actually like accurate.
Nailing it on the head. I mean,
I feel so short. I can't do this anymore.
What'd you say?
I said I feel way too short. I can't do this anymore.
That's fun. I'll set that eventually. But yeah, Galadriel should not look younger. Thank you, Andy McCall. Galadriel should, because once again, she is fully grown at this point. She is like fully grown. So why should she look different than the Galadriel?
She should look exactly like she did in the Fellowship of the Ring.
Exactly. Complaints about the overuse of soulless CGI are nothing new. They're not even new to the Lord of the Rings universe. In 2014, Viggo Mortensen, who played Aragorn in all three of Peter Jackson's adaptations of Tolkien's 1954 masterpiece, lamented the fact that the director increasingly relied on CGI rather than practical effects. In the first movie, yes, there's Rivendell and Mordor, but there's sort of an organic quality to it. The actors acting with each other, real landscapes, it's grittier. Mortensen told The Telegraph. The second movie already started ballooning for my taste. Then by the third one, there were a lot of special effects. It was grandiose and all that, but whatever was subtle in the first movie gradually got lost in the second and third. Now with The Hobbit, it's like that to the power of 10. Now I agree with that. I do think Viggo Mortensen is being a little nitpicky when it comes to the originals, because I mean, while Minas Tirith was probably the largest, most impressive, fully CGI'd set piece in that whole trilogy, it looks incredible. It is definitely, it's not as well integrated as say Rivendell in the first one. But Rivendell also did have the benefit of more actual builds. And I do think the Isengard overall is better integrated, but for the most part, Minas Tirith is in almost every shot works with the landscape. It looks real. It's
so pretty.
It's gorgeous.
I remember being a kid and seeing that. So really depressing story for you. The Return of the King is the last movie me and my family saw together as a family in the theaters. But we got there and we were all like fucking pumped for this movie. And we actually had to sit it was so packed that we couldn't sit like up where everyone else was. We had to sit down in like the handicap area. And I just remember like this the whole time. It was so beautiful. It was so cool. And I was like, this is like the greatest movie ever.
Think about that too, how special that is in a movie. How many times we've been told in movies these days what to like, what to believe, and what to think is cool, what to think is pretty, what to think is shiny, what to think is impressive. And we're told what to think about Minas Tirith in the first Lord of the Rings movie when Boromir is describing it to Aragorn. And then the payoff of seeing it ourselves 2 movies later and seeing it exactly as bold and beautiful and impressive as Boromir described it, having that payoff. It's really magical. There's a magic to that trilogy. It's great. It's great. Before we jump back to the article, I did forget we did have a couple of super chats, few super chats roll in, and I don't want to make Russell Hall feel neglected because he's important. And where am I? All right. English Rose. Russell Hall. What's your opinion, Jesse? Did Obi-Wan sneak a peek at Padme's hot pink sandcasm while she was in the birthing position, or was he a gentleman? Look, he was assisting with a very difficult birth, okay? And his eyes had to be all up on there to see when the baby's head was popping out. He was doing what he had to do. If he caught a couple of flashes for the spank bank later, that's between him and the Force, all right? But I'm just saying, you got to do what you got to do in the moment. Eagle Rider, thank you for the super chat. This show is utter refuge. That said, I miss you, Chica. Oh, thanks, love. I hope you're both doing well, sweet ladies. Thank you, Rosetta. I hope you are too. I hope you had a fun and kinky Valentine's Day. I'm sure you did. Is your hubby recovered yet? Rebels. Oh wait, thank you for the super sticker. It's a smiling Shiba Inu. Yay! All right, thank you guys for the lurv. And then back we are with the pain. This September, having evidently learned absolutely nothing from Mortenson's critique, we are all going to get the chance to see what CGI to the power of $1 billion looks like, with filmmaker J.A. Bayona directing the first 2 episodes. Amazon have seen fit to spend.
By the way, he's the guy that did Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom.
Okay, because it's like, hold on, Jurassic World. Amazon has seen fit to spend that mind-boggling amount on a prequel series written by the guys who did a first draft of Star Trek Beyond, and inspired everyone's part of the original novel, the sprawling appendices at the back. Or inspired by everyone's favorite of the original novel, the sprawling appendices at the back. Yes, that actually is.
Oh, by the way, Jesse, the guys that are writing the show have 0 credits on IMDb except for this show.
Yeah, apparently they did the first draft of a not great Star Trek movie that wasn't even good enough to become the final draft.
Exactly. So, and the final draft was shit too. So
the final draft wasn't all that great. I enjoyed it more than Into Darkness, because Into Darkness was garbage.
Into Darkness was a shit show.
Yeah. For that outlay, they're hoping to have a Game of Thrones size hit on their hands, or at the very least, a big enough success to outshine HBO's Game of Thrones prequel, House of the Dragons, which is also set to premiere later this year. I just want to say, I don't think Matt Smith looks right in that world. I don't like what I saw of that either, but that's another story. The scale of Amazon's spending is a sign that this is something of a pet project for boss Jeff Bezos. Quote, he is personally a huge fan of Tolkien and incredibly passionate about all of it and very well versed. Jennifer Salk, head of Amazon Studios, told Vanity Fair this month. His desire to be ambitious and for us to be ambitious with our content has always been clear from the moment I got here. Clearly, that sentiment is supposed to reassure Tolkien fans that the new series will do justice to the author's legacy. But all that talk of striving ambition makes it sound suspiciously like the inflated price tag is really just another willy-waving exercise. Thank you. Fucking call it like it is. A willy-waving exercise from the man who brought us a wildly phallic space rocket. Lest we forget, the show's $1 billion budget was directly generated by a business which pays its workers poverty wages, saw them pee in bottles during shifts, and suggests they keep working even as a tornado literally destroys their workplace. What better way for Bezos to spend those ill-gotten gains than on a grandiose parable about the dangers that come with great power? If Bezos is really that much of a Tolkien fan, he's no doubt familiar with the author's own gorgeous illustrations of his imagined Middle-earth. These picturesque drawings and watercolors in tandem with his novels define the Tolkien-esque aesthetic. When the series arrives, fans will be hoping to see more of that and less of the bland CGI and generic action sequences presented in the trailer. There's one illustration in particular that Bezos might feel kinship with. In Conversations with Smaug, Tolkien draw the unaccessibly wealthy dragon curled atop the vast mound of gold and jewels he guards so jealously, joyously hoarding wealth while impoverishing those around him. It's the part Bezos was born to play. No CGI required. Somebody give this journalist a medal. Fucking,
I know who wrote this.
So this was ran through Yahoo Sports of all things, sourced from the Independent, and it is by Kevin E.G. Perry. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin E.G. Perry, for fucking saying it like it is, for calling this shit out, for calling it out that this is no more than Jeff Bezos' next dick-waving contest on his own pet project that he fucking thinks he's more entitled to than the creator himself. Because that's what this shit is about. All right, let's see. A couple more super chats in the by and by while we all sit on that mic drop. That was so beautifully written. I got excited reading that conclusion. I was like, yes, preach. That was good. Andy McCallum, thank you for the super sticker. What is up, my dude? So since I didn't call Liver today, it's gonna be tomorrow, but we're gonna do our meeting. We have secret meetings that have to happen. It'll be fine. Thank you for the Shiba Inu, full of love. Thank you for the Shiba Inu, so cute. English Rose says, come on, catch up. A robot delivered those babies. I don't think Obi-Wan would have corrupted himself or violated Padme's privacy. Look at her pink bits. And look
who changed her clothes?
I think he had to wet nurse that shit. I do. The robot may have been the doctor, but he had to wet nurse that shit. I think he had to put eyes in there. And look, to witness the miracle of life, I'm just saying, whatever he personally did with those glimpses he caught is between him and the Force. But the miracle of life, man.
Would you want him to be in the room, or would you want Yoda to be in the room holding your hand?
I would much rather have Obi-Wan in the room. I also would be okay if Obi-Wan was like the father of those children in that moment. So, I caught something I never noticed, but I can't believe I never noticed this in all my years of being a huge huge Indiana Jones and Star Wars fan. We were watching Temple of Doom the other day. And
you never noticed that?
The Obi-Wan, that's Cafe Obi-Wan or something.
Mm-hmm.
I had never noticed that. I don't know how I missed it all those times, all those years. I might have noticed it once before, just forgot or whatever, but it's like, Club Obi-Wan, that's cool. Thought that's awesome. Anyway, English Rose says, I think Obi-Wan died without ever seeing one. Well, I'm sure the new series will probably fuck all that up for all.
No, he did. He saw Satine's. He totally banged Satine. She's a character in the Clone Wars.
There you go. See? Just gotta get down with them Clone Wars. Are you gonna watch the show?
I might.
I legitimately think I might not on this one.
You know what? If it appears on the Magical Bay of Jack Sparrows, I might.
I mean, I have Amazon, so I can do it for free, but...
Oh, Lord of the Rings. Oh.
Yeah, this one.
You know what? I would still try to use the Magical Bay because I wouldn't want to give them the views.
Would want to give them the clicks. I like that, actually. I like that approach. I might do the same. I just might not, though. I honestly... Given the luxury of having gone through this once with Star Wars, and it's a very one-to-one parallel, too, I think. You can look at it very neatly that way with some key differences. But you've got the originals. And then you've got the creator returning to try to recapture the magic with the prequels and unable to do so, but putting forth, something watchable. And then you have in the instance of The Lord of the Rings, it's the studio coming back, the director coming back, although the director doesn't have nearly the same sway, which is, I think, why the project gets compromised and falls to lesser heights than the original. But similar flaws, unnecessary CGI, gratuitous action sequences, things that aren't really part of the original story, that don't need to be there, that are just getting shoved in. And then you get to the sequels. And that, for all intents and purposes, is what this Rings of Power show is going to be. This is going to be the sequel trilogy for the Lord of the Rings saga. And knowing what I know now, if I could go back in time and choose to never watch those 3 movies and just never know and never think about them, I would. I would rather never have seen The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and Return of Skywalker. If I could choose to have those scrubbed from my memory, I would. And so now that I'm staring down the same decision, I think that I have to make the same choice. I have to make the right choice this time. But see, Peter Nickerson, I don't need to watch it to shit on it. And here's why. I will show you with this other article. Because I already know why I don't want to. And I think, again, it just makes me feel comfortable being like, I already know why I don't want to watch this show. I have not been outraged about this topic yet today. I just want you guys all to understand that. You have not yet heard me feel outraged over this topic. You are about to hear me outraged over this topic. A field guide to the Rings of Power, Part 1, concerning Hobbits. Spoilers, this journalist will not be winning any awards from me. The furry-footed creatures of the Shire have always been the audience surrogate in The Lord of the Rings, which is why their ancestors are being given a prominent role in Amazon's upcoming series. Okay. That is a very rational explanation for why they felt the need to inject basically hobbits into this new series. Well, in The Hobbit, in Lord of the Rings, they're point of view creatures. So in order to follow on that trend, we should make them point of view creatures. It's a very, very similar fallacy to going, well, since the Skywalkers were the focal point of the original trilogies, we have to make sure that if we're going to write more trilogies, that they are all somehow intrinsically tied to the Skywalkers, and that everything we fucking do in the Star Wars universe somehow has Luke Skywalker tied back to it. You don't have to do that. In fact, pointedly don't do that. In fact, this is the bigger mistake, is when you are inheriting somebody else's universe, actively do not try to pick up their threads and do the things that they were doing. Take your piece of humble pie and do something fucking different. Personal opinion, but whatever. What do I know? Ginger Viking Jesus says they should just consider renaming the show to Lord of the Woke. Just my misogynistic, surely racist opinion. Tolkien is producing an F5 tornado in his grave. I want to refer to all of this as the rape of Tolkien. That's how I'm thinking of this. I'm thinking of this as the rape of Middle Earth, the rape of Tolkien's Middle Earth. So here we go. Let's dive in, shall we? Words. So this is a little picture. This is what it looks like. So you saw her in the trailer. And that's our voiceover narrator in the trailer talking about, what if there's a bigger other way, another world? I know you love rape, English Rose. You'll love this subject then, Russell. Rapity rape. We'll refer to this as rape a lot because that's what it is. It's like, in the very literary sense, it's a rape of Tolkien's work. Hobbits are described as being small and childlike, the way Billy Boyd played one, or Elijah Wood, or Dominic Monaghan, Sean Astin. This one just looks like a child. Like, there's a difference between looking childlike and just looking like you're a child. It's going to be very unsettling if our point of view character who's going through adventures and possibly sex and romance and all this other stuff looks like a literal child. Because of course this is, you know, the new modern era too. And that's one of the things you must also consider is that Frodo, in spite of the fact that he did not look like a literal child, but still looked very, very childlike, doesn't do anything sexual. There's nothing that makes them not childlike. It's not saying they're going to necessarily do that with this character or anything like that, but it's just...
Well, so what it says in the Vanity Fair exclusive is that there's 2 hobbits that witness something bad happening, or I think provocative happening, and they get dragged into the story with the dwarves, which, sorry, I haven't eaten these in forever. I'm treating myself to wake myself up, and my tongue is on fire. But hobbits aren't even supposed to be in Middle-earth right now, so they're not even going to call them hobbits. They're going to call them harefoot.
Yeah, so...
And I don't mean like hair, like human hair, like the type of rabbit.
Oh, no.
And so it's her and this Asian chick that are the 2 hobbits.
They're harfoots. It's H-A-R. It's actually, yeah, it's appropriated from something. We'll get to that a little bit later too, because that's actually appropriated from something in Tolkien's lore already that they're bastardizing. So yeah, continue, please.
That was it.
Oh, that was it. Okay. Mm. So yeah, so is something we'll just read the article because it dives into that too, and then I'll yell and scream about it when we get there. With each day we go ever closer to the release of Amazon's much anticipated $1 billion budgeted Lord of the Rings series, The Rings of Power. Posters have been released, a teaser dropped during the Super Bowl, but now it's time to dive even deeper. Over the coming months, the Ringers, Joanna Robinson, oh boy, will guide you through the mythology and Lord of the Rings of J.R.R. Tolkien's vast world, bringing you up to speed on everything you need to know before the series premieres. Welcome to the field guide to The Rings of Power. When Amazon dropped its title reveal video for its lavish J.R.R. Tolkien adaptation, The Rings of Power, audiences heard a very familiar kind of voice. Just as Cate Blanchett's Galadriel narrated the open of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, here was Morfydd Clark's Galadriel melodically delivering some classic Tolkien lore about some of its boldest characters. 3 rings for elven kings under the sky, 7 for dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord in his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. A different, smaller narrator took center stage in the Short Rings teaser that premiered on Super Bowl Sunday. As the camera soars over exotic locations like the dazzling island kingdom of Numenor, Markella Kavanagh, who plays a hobbit-like creature named Nori Brandyfoot, which is also wrong, asked, "Haven't you ever wondered what else is out there? There's wonders in this world beyond our wandering. I can feel it." The question, which also, like, they're a nomadic tribe, which they literally tell us later in this, like, okay. The question evokes one of Tolkien's most popular and tattooed lines from the Fellowship of the Ring, not all those who wandered are lost. The trailer then shows a starry-eyed Thank you. The trailer then shows a starry-eyed Nori Brandyfoot gazing upward, and after a dizzying montage of elves and arrows and dwarves, closes with her grubby little hand reaching up to grab the much larger, even grubbier hand of a mystery man. It's perfectly Tolkienian in every way. No. There's just one problem. The hobbits aren't even supposed to be here. Thank you. But then she'll ruin it in a second. In the recent flurry of teasers and posters, your first introduction to Amazon's Rings of Power, then you might have missed the fact that the story is set during Middle-earth's Second Age, which took place thousands of years before anyone named Baggins went on any kind of adventure. A lot of fun and exciting things happened during that era, including the rise and fall of civilization on that sun-drenched island Numenor and the forging of Sauron's infamous ring. But Tolkien is very clear that the hobbits didn't really enter the historical record until Bilbo in The Hobbit and then Frodo in The Lord of the Rings. Quote, one of the very specific things the texts say is that hobbits never did anything historic or noteworthy before the Third Age, showrunner Patrick McKay told Vanity Fair. So, if they're not noteworthy, why are they here? According to McKay and co-showrunner J.D. Payne, it just wouldn't feel like Middle-earth without them. Literally, that's the reason. That's the explanation. Because they'll go on, we'll read into how they justify what these are, the Harfoots and all that stuff. But that's literally straight from the showrunner's mouth. The reason why they inserted hobbits or hobbit-like creatures into an era that pointedly, specifically, per the text, does not have them in it, is because they just know better than Tolkien, that they were supposed to be there all along, because how would the audience ever like any of this without them? They
just want money.
I'm just floored by that. Like, it's literally their admission. We don't think people will pay money to watch the show if we don't put hobbits in it.
Well, they're already getting money from. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
From like Amazon Prime, like Jeff Bezos has an obscene amount of money, and Elon is going to sit back and laugh at him wasting it all on this,
especially when it's an abject failure. John Thomas says, I'm with Jesse. I won't watch this garbage. It destroys Tolkien. They destroyed the Wheel of Time, and I'm so glad Honor Harrington series never made it past development stage. We still have the books. Yeah, I've been hearing the Wheel of Time is absolutely awful, which makes me sad because people thought it looked really good when it was, when they were making it and the trailers and stuff. And if they can't do Wheel of Time right, I mean, that to me, again, that's a big red flag right there. Wheel of Time is a fantasy epic. It's a beloved fantasy epic, but it is nowhere near the heights of Lord of the Rings. And you can't even get that shit right. So we're supposed to trust you with this one. This continues. Yeah. Thank you, John, for that super chat, John Thomas. And I agree. I can't see myself wanting to watch this. From a certain point of view, especially when it comes to creating a franchise that fans of the Jackson films can recognize, Payne and McKay may be right. Countless aficionados would surely disagree and wave their well-worn copies of the Silmarillion in the air as proof that Tolkien himself wrote at length about thousands of years of Middle-earth history without a single mention of a hairy foot or a cute curly head. The key words here is history. As engaging as the exploits of the Silmarillion may be, it's neither a novel nor an adventure story. It's Tolkien indulging in one of his favorite pastimes, mythology. For adventure, you need an audience surrogate, and in Tolkien's mythology-dense world, that means hobbits. Hey, Anna, can you think of another creature that exists in Middle-earth that humans might identify with?
Elves.
Yeah. How about other humans?
Wizards,
dwarves, giants, trolls, or literally other humans. Like, there are already humans in Lord of the Rings. How do you need a self-insert creature when people are already one of your creatures?
Because they want them to be like little innocents that can do no wrong, that are just there. And it's like they're just trying to capitalize on it.
Exactly.
That's all this
children.
is.
If we make them little diversity elf children, diversity elves, exactly. If we have diversity elves and little children running around, then everyone will be happy, right?
Oh my God, do you want to see? You want to see one of the funniest memes? Let me see if I can find it, and I'll send it to you. You're gonna laugh your ass off because a lot of people are like, "Okay, you want to have all this diversity in here, then are you gonna show them all get massacred at the end because none of them made it through to the Lord of the Rings?" I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna DM it to you in a minute. Give me a sec.
In the meantime, Moss, thank you for the super chat and thank you for the turtle. And I just love your turtle flying through space. Thank you for having that turtle flying through space for us. Peep the Variety article for the War of the Rohirrim anime film if you haven't already. The source material is awesome and in good hands this time. Ooh.
Yeah, I did a video on that yesterday.
That sounds cool. Now that sounds interesting. These are the kinds of things. I mean, like, I think the animated Hobbit from way back in the day is awesome. I love that one.
That one scared me. Okay, no, so the Road to the Rohirrim, it says, like, in the announcement at the very last article, it has absolutely no ties to Amazon's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
and it's literally just an anime of Helm's Deep and Helm Hammerhorn.
Oh,
or
that's
cool.
Or
fuck. Why am I saying his name wrong? Fuck, I'm sorry, I'm tired. Okay, go look at your DMs real fast, and I want you to share this because it's funny.
Okay, you got it.
It's really dark.
Blue Wizards would have been cool. Russell Hall, I agree.
Yeah, because there's the two brothers that are the blue. So there's Sauron the White. There's Gandalf the Gray. Oh, I always blank on the brown guy, but the one that was in the Hobbit. Radagast. And then there's the two brothers. They're the Blue Wizards.
That would have been cool because that's again, it's gonna sound. Oh hey, my pick that I've been looking for that was disappeared forever just magically reappeared. Right. It's gonna sound very familiar. Wow, my brain just went through. It's going to sound very familiar to say, wow, you're talking about when they're sitting here trying to make the Silmarillion comparison. And, we don't want to adapt. It's very similar to talking about the Star Wars and the extended universe, where you jumped in and you wanted to jump into the main timeline and rewrite and write your own shit and pull stuff around and rewrite things and change things around in the main timeline without any regard whatsoever to canon and to the story and to what the author's intentions or creations were. Meanwhile, you have infinite lesser characters, smaller plot lines, ideas like Numenor. Okay, that's a perfect one. But even there, it's like, it depends what you're going to do.
Well, they're not allowed to pull from the Silmarillion.
Which is why it baffles me that they're trying to why they're trying to make this seem like such a main timeline, like a main event thing. Like it's have a dwarf story. Like if they wanted to do this as the original story of Laketown and Smog and stuff, which I don't know if they're allowed to, because I don't think they're allowed to touch a lot of that stuff. But even then, I don't think that's ever written down anywhere. If they wanted to dramatize the original story of Laketown and Smog, that probably would have looked really cool and been fine. But it's this obsessive need to make this show wants to be more important and groundbreaking than the thing that came before it. That's where it starts to lose the heart of things. I mean, yeah, Numenor. Numenor's a great, the fact that it's going to be in here, okay, but I sincerely, it's the part of the big picture. We're existing all over Middle Earth. Maybe they're going to go to it. Maybe it'll become a plot point. But like, the thing to do with Numenor is to just set a short series in Numenor, because we don't really know what goes on in Numenor. You can make up anything without it being counter to canon, as long as you don't fuck with Aragorn's lineage. As long as you don't fuck with the lineage of the kings of Numenor, the stuff that's actually written down, right? A million different adventure stories. Like The Hobbit is as inconsequential to the overarching history of Middle Earth as any one-off story you could write in another part of the world is, when you look at it in that context. As epic and grand and wonderful and magical as The Hobbit is, it's inconsequential in the greater history of Middle Earth. You can write those stories in Middle Earth. It's, as Tolkien himself, again, proved with those two. You can write stories. Sorry, I totally went on a tangent. Forgot to bring up the thing that you said.
You're fine. Yeah, okay. Okay, so you see what I mean?
Yep.
It's like they're schooling themselves, because it's like, all right, well, all of these the diversity people that you got is literally just props for your checklist. Where did they all go? Where did all their ancestors go? Did they get massacred?
Exactly. Like, what is... Sorry, let me pull it. Words. I did want to share this. Why am I retarded right now? I'm like, I want to share this with the class, but I also want to put this in its own tab because, it's not working. Damn it. Whatever. Okay. I will share and then just remember to unshare before I accidentally share my Twitter DMs. Boom. Like,
yeah. Well, because also it's that joke about how it's like those fucking dumbasses that are like, oh, orcs are just, a metaphor for black people. And it's like, if you really think that, you're the one with the racism problem, because nobody thought that. So since they all think that orcs are black people, and okay, so what happened to all of the black elves?
Exactly. What are we? Oh, they left for the Greyhavens first. Because that's the thing. Unless you don't expressly explain that in your show, which they're not going to remember to do, then you're going to have this problem. You're going to have a very big, giant, fat problem on your hands. It's yeah. It's those are my
Isn't
words.
that funny?
That's great though. I'm just like, I love it. I fucking love it though. I'm also okay. I do have the low key fear too that there's because this is the Game of Thrones influence, the Game of Thrones effects, where they're going to feel the need to insert sex into Lord of the Rings, basically. in ways that it doesn't even need to be there.
You don't want to see Galadriel get pounded like Tifa?
I had some really scarring experiences as a child visiting libraryofmoria.com and reading this 5-part story called To Comfort an Elf, in which the side plot during the whole thing was just that everyone could hear Galadriel and Celeborn banging in their tent the whole time. Yep. It was a lot. Tyler Preston, thank you for the super chat. Burger King's Kids Club of the Rings. That is exactly what it feels like. Get your toys in your kids' meals and your Happy Meals now. Oh my God, Andy. I'm going to sign these Hobbits up for crypto. Andy, did you watch the Super Bowl? Because half of the ads were crypto. They were clearly targeted right for you. That was weird. Okay, so that, I don't know if you heard about that, Anna. There were like there was a frightening amount of cryptocurrency ads during the Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, they can afford it, right? And you know what? Peaches was watching like the best ones like on his phone, and there was one where like Matthew McConaughey is like going over the world and like I don't know,
we've seen that one. That's been on with the Olympics too. We've seen that one like 1,000 times.
Oh, okay. No, the one that made me sad was the robot puppy one, where he's just trying to get to the car, and then he loses his charge, and then the human gets him and plugs him in, and I was like, oh my God, the robot puppy almost died.
That one was cute.
I was so sad.
I enjoyed that one a lot, actually.
That one, I was like, that car is ugly, but that puppy.
That puppy was precious.
That poor little robot puppy.
Reminded me of Poochie from the back in the 90s.
Oh my God, yeah. Did you have one of those?
I did. I still in my childhood room somewhere.
My friend had one. It was so useless.
It was. It was not nearly as exciting as I thought it was gonna be. I had the funny thing was, it's like I really, really wanted one year, like so badly, and then my mom got me this remote control cyber spider instead, and I was like, it was one of those gifts where I was like, even in the moment I couldn't be that disappointed that I didn't get a Poochie, because my remote controlled robot spider was so much fucking cooler, and I was like, this is awesome, and I played with that. And then the funny was, later on, like either the next year or something, I did finally get a Poochie. And I was like, I was excited, but I was like, low-key, when you got me the knockoff present that wasn't the Poochie, that was still better. Like, usually it's the disappointing story where it's like, I wanted the thing and I got the knockoff version instead and it was terrible. And I'm like, nah, in this case, the knockoff version was way better. I
didn't get either, so.
Yeah, I did love my Poochie, though. We had a bond.
My friend got it, and I was glad that I didn't get one. And I remember when they came out with the cat, too.
I never got the cat. I never wanted the cat. I didn't like cats back then. But, well, I didn't dislike that.
Did you have Furbies?
My sister had one. It would wake her up in the middle of the night. We would throw it against the wall really, really hard to try to kill it. And nothing would kill it.
Furby survives everything.
It's terrifying. we were very frightened of it. It was funny because it was like she got it, and I think like I don't know if she ever actually wanted it, or if somebody gave it to her as like a present, and we already were, as like all three of us siblings were already on board with the fact that Furbies were the devil. So by the time she got it, we were all just like, like we're kind of excited that we have one to get to play around with it, but we're also kind of terrified of it because it's the devil. Those things were scary.
Remember when McDonald's, like, they had the Furby keychains and that was your toy?
Yes.
You had no choice. You just had to have this little Furby.
I think that's when I stopped getting Happy Meals. Whatchamacallit? I was in Target and I saw an R2-D2 Tamagotchi. Like it said Tamagotchi on it.
You know what's funny? I can't remember if it's that or the other one that's exactly like that, but the chick I went to high school, her parents invented those.
Tamagotchis?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's the little one where it's like a little egg, right?
Yeah, you had the Tamagotchis and the Gigapets. Yeah.
Yeah, her parents invented it.
Whoa, they must be loaded.
They didn't seem like it.
Unless they invented it but then got their idea stolen.
No, they invented it because that's their last name.
Oh, Tamagotchi?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. It's like, oh, Tamagotchi, like the toy. They're like, yes, we.
Yeah, I just remember I was like, why didn't they buy you a better car? But it was funny. I guess they used like the money to like retire, and they had a donut shop for fun.
That's awesome. That's really cool. That's totally something I would do with that money. Ginger Viking Jesus, thank you so much for the super chat. I still want a Darth Bane and Xana Star Wars saga, but Disney doesn't have the testicular fortitude to make an R-rated Star Wars flick. He sets up A New Hope, people.
I mean, okay, to be fair, you could do that without making it rated R. And here's my argument for that. If you watch The Sound of Music, you can have Nazis and terror in a rated G movie.
That's true. There you go.
It's just the setup and the anticipate. Because, I mean, all you have to do, like, again, Sound of Music, you're singing, yay, la-di-da, tweedledee, tweedledum, ooh, he's hot, ooh, I like her, let's get married. And then all you have to do is have a guy walk in a brown uniform with a thing on their arm. And you immediately, the whole entire mood changes immediately. So with Darth Bane and Xana, you could, I mean, when it comes to like the killing and stuff and when it comes, yeah, you just don't have to show him killing. I mean, yeah, you could, if I can just do a challenge accepted, I could do a Darth Bane trilogy and make it rated G. I think I could.
That'd be an
it's all about the setup. And, you know, it's letting your mind finish what, you know, it's like the darkness. Like when you hear somebody screaming in the dark and you can't see it, your mind makes it more horrifying. Like in Reservoir Dogs, when he's cutting off the guy's ear.
Oh, yeah.
You don't see it. You
like
just hear him screaming.
With the massacre, all you have to do to have it happen is, you know, set forth the intention, show the person entering the place where you know it's going to take place, and then, you know, the reactions of the aftermath. That's it.
Also, there's like a big, like, so like everyone dies because Bane tricks all of them so that, because he knows that the leader of the Sith, because this is when there's hundreds and hundreds of Sith. Yeah. And so he tricks them. And so they do this like ceremony thing in like this cave, but it's actually just going to be like basically an atomic bomb and like absorb everyone and everything. And so it like kills all of the Sith. So because he's like, oh, there can only be two, one master and apprentice. So he kills all of the Sith.
Yeah.
And that's when he finds Xana. And, you know, Xana does murder people when she's a kid and stuff like that because she goes to the dark side and whatnot. But there is killing, but I think there's a way you can do it to maybe it's not shown and just heard. So that way it doesn't have to be rated R. Yeah. And I mean, you don't have to have, I don't think him and Giffany have sex. So I think there's just like a kiss scene when she poisons him and he goes into his force trance, but I'm totally mumbling now.
Oh, no worries. I just thought that we should read this one. This question. Do you think Galadriel pegged Celeborn? Again, in this particular instance, Russell, because of my formative experiences with libraryofmoria.com, I'm going to go with yes on this one. My gut says yes. My gut just says yes. Also, because, like, it's not in the movies, but in the books, it's totally a thing that, like, so Galadriel and Celeborn are the rulers of Lothlorien. They're like, you know, they're together. That's their thing. But then Galadriel has this like connection with Elrond, and between the two of them, they're the seats of power in the Elvish kingdoms of Middle Earth, where, you know, it's him and her, kind of like, if you could low-key think of it like if Elrond is the king of the elves, then Galadriel is the queen, you know. And there's like the king of the Mirkwood elves and stuff in that too, but the elves as a whole kind of defer to Galadriel and Elrond's wisdom. And so there's like in the books, when you read like the Fellowship of the Ring book and they get to Lothlorien, there is this weird undertone of how like Celeborn low-key feels like you can, it's like in the books, like where Celeborn feels low-key emasculated by like Galadriel being the boss and like kind of does is a little bit more aggro, because it's just kind of hinted at that he's a little more aggro because he's kind of a kept man. And so it wouldn't surprise me, even based on that, if Galadriel begged Celeborn. I'm just saying. I have experience. I've read these books and all of their lore so much. Macy Van Dusen, a true adaptation of Alita Battle Angel would have been rated R. That would have been cool to see too. That it done in full graphitude.
I mean, it was pretty graphic. I liked Alita Battle Angel the way it was. The only thing that I had a problem with was I'm like, why would you want to go up there when you have a beautiful waterfall with beautiful views? Build your house right fucking there. Don't live in the shitty city.
Exactly. So yeah, so that's Galadriel, Celeborn, and one daughter became the mother of Arwen, and that's yes, I'm aware that they have the two of the rings of power. That's why they're the rulers, though. The rings of power. 2 or 3 rings of Elven kings, 2 blah blah blah, the people, and that's what it always was. You were the kings of your domains and your territories if you had these rings. And Celeborn does not have a ring, Galadriel does. But Galadriel and Elrond have that weird connection because Galadriel's child and Elrond made Arwen. So it's like, yeah, and then obviously you see how intrinsic Arwen is to the fate of man because of her love of Aragorn and all that stuff. You know, they're the things. And then so Celeborn's just kind of chilling. They're like, I'm not really important in all this stuff. I'm just here ruling.
Isn't it weird that Galadriel is Arwen's grandma?
It is really weird because they always because that's the thing, like Elrond and Galadriel having the rings and having that co-rulership and like this weird co-parenting thing with Arwen, because Galadriel was never as directly involved with raising her, but always directly involved with what her fate would be with Elrond and stuff. It was just such like a weird. I always felt like Elrond, Galadriel, and Celeborn had some kind of weird like triangle going on, where it's like the awkwardness that comes from we sort of have a kind of parenting.
Oh my god, you know what it is, together? Jesse? It's Twilight.
Ah!
Oh my god, it's fucking Twilight, because there's Edward and Jacob, and Galadriel would be Bella, and Celeborn would be Edward, and then Elrond would be Jacob, and then Jacob falls in love with their daughter. Oh my god, it's Twilight! I ruined it. My mind, I can't unsee this now.
So, James Unchained, exactly. Elrond hangs out with his mother-in-law. That is their relationship. But it's also, again, it's like, it's always weird though, because technically she's his mother-in-law, but they interact with each other more like spouses, but they're not romantically involved and never have been. So again, it's like that weird, but yes, I'm afraid though, because we are going to get an Elrond in the show. I'm very afraid that they're going to do an Elrond Galadriel relationship.
It'll be so fucking weird.
Because then it will literally be Twilight. Then you're right. Then it will literally be indistinguishable from Twilight. I'm so upset. I'm very upset. It's because I feel like they're going to do this now. And I'm very, very upset. Okay. Speaking of being upset, let's bastardize Tolkien's lore even more. So meanwhile, back at the Hobbits, right, that we need as our self-insert character, we should clarify here that the small furry-footed creatures in the Rings of Power are not technically hobbits. They're what's known as harfoots, and they're an evolutionary predecessor to hobbits. While the folks from the Shire, with the exception of the adventurous Bagginses and friends, like to stay cozy in their holes in the ground, the harfoots in the Amazon series are nomadic. The more you move, the harder it is for any pesky Middle-earth historian to nail you down in the historical record. So this is their justification. They're literally saying the harfoots are the evolutionary predecessors to the hobbits. So these harfoots that we're seeing literally do evolve to become the modern-day hobbits of the Third Age, and they're nomadic. Because it totally makes sense for a nomadic people to become the most settled homebodies of the entire planet. Also, it is a lot harder. It is a lot easier for historians to miss you if you live in a hole in the ground in a corner of the world that nobody ever fucking goes to than it would be to miss you if you are literally running around everywhere. How would we not know about these creatures that are running around all over the fucking place makes way more sense to me. So this was what I was saying the last time we talked about this, where there's no way for them to put a Hobbit at front and center of the show without completely corrupting and bastardizing the history of Lord of the Rings. And that's exactly what they're fucking doing.
They don't care, Jesse.
And they even can carry on. The nomadic spirit is a show invention. But in truth, very little is known about the Harfoots in Tolkien's writing. Yes, plenty is known. The word Harfoot translates to one with hairy feet. And in the prologue to the Fellowship of the Ring title concerning hobbits, Tolkien wrote that of the 3 races of hobbits, the Harfoots were, quote, browner of skin, smaller and shorter, and they were beardless and bootless. Their hands and feet were neat and nimble, and they preferred highlands and hillsides. Contrary to the Rings of Power's depiction of them as nomadic, Tolkien writes, they were the most normal and representative variety of hobbit, and far the most numerous. They were the most inclined to settle in one place, and the longest preserved their ancestral habits of living in tunnels and holes. Those tunneling Harfoots eventually became the hobbits of the Shire, and so the difference between the two is mostly one of semantics and a rather convenient loophole for Payne and McKay to be able to include small folk in their world. So even this author, who is 100% sweet on the show and going ham for it, can't not point out how they are bastardizing Tolkien's own mythology. Harfoots are literally just hobbits. Harfoots are not predecessors of hobbits. Harfoots are one of the 3 racial classifications of hobbits. They are the most common ones. Amanda Pizzolatto clearly likes Lord of the Rings as much as I do. Fallowhides were hunters, not Harfoots. Harfoots were rustic homebodies. Also, Fallowhides were the more likely to have. So that was another thing in here. Brandyfoot. Also, just we're gonna be cute because there's like Proudfoots and there's Brandybucks and that's a thing and that's that. Yeah, the Foot clan are all Harfoots. The Brandybucks were Fallowhides. That was actually a point about them in the books. Merry didn't live in Hobbiton with everyone else. He lived a little further out. He had a little more of an adventurous spirit. He was the only one that had actually been to Bree, that had actually been outside of the Shire before they go on their adventure, because he was a Brandybuck who was a Fallowhide. If at some point Fallowhides and other Foots mixed at some point, it's possible you could have had a Brandyfoot lineage somewhere. But certainly way back at the origins of these creatures, you wouldn't have, it's just understanding etymology, and Tolkien would give a shit about this because literally he was a linguist. It doesn't make sense to have a Brandyfoot, especially when that predates both Brandybucks and Proudfoots, because Proudfoots are clearly Harfoots because they have all of those traits that are natural in Harfoots, and Brandybucks don't. Brandybucks would be part. No Proudfoot would ever breed with with Brandybucks. They would never want to mix their species because the Foots would all be too suspicious of the Fallowhides who had the adventurous spirits, and the Fallowhides would all be impatient with the fucking Proudfoots. Yes, exactly. And Frodo is part Fallowhide. Frodo is actually part Brandybuck. He's a distant cousin of Merry's. Not even that distant, actually. But he is part Brandybuck, which is, and they go into that. That's his lust for adventure. They talk about it right in the damn book. He was a Fallowhide, and that's why they think it was his lust for adventure. And then on top of that, having Bilbo as his parental figure just threw it over the edge. So,
It's crazy how, when you actually read these things and you actually know about it, how, And
the thing is, I didn't need to. The best part about this, I'm sure, and look, and you should, if you're doing your due diligence as a journalist, you should go back and reconsult this shit. I didn't need to open a book or crack a text or look up anything to know this shit. Why? Because somebody named J.R.R. fucking Tolkien took years of his life and dedicated them into crafting this world down to every detail, to the point where you could be a nerd like me and actually debate the etymology of names in these fucking universes. And to just throw shit together, smash words together because it sounds like something that exists in Lord of the Rings is about as disrespectful to a fan of Lord of the Rings and to Tolkien himself as you could possibly fucking be.
Mm-hmm.
Carrying on. Sorry, am I angry yet?
Not as much as I thought you would be. But
we're still getting
close.
We're still getting warmed up. Whatever you want to call them, these curious childlike creatures are Tolkien's most singular invention. Dragons, wizards, elves, dwarves, trolls, and orcs, though they're usually called goblins, are dime a dozen in the world of fantasy literature, but hobbits, this is where I'd actually stop you too and be like, no, because actually Tolkien has orcs and he has goblins, and his version of his orc is very his orc is very, very unique to him. In fact, he's the first person ever to distinguish orcs from goblins and actually have two separate races that are biologically distinct. He also, elves, you actually have to give him a lot of credit for too, because he is a big part of changing elves from small sprite-like creatures into creatures. Bless you.
Thank you.
But hobbits, that's Tolkien. These creatures have their own inspirations, but famously, this entire Middle-earth endeavor can be traced back to a sentence that Tolkien, then a bored professor and father of four, doodled on a student's exam he was marking, quote, "In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit." He made up the rest from there. I love it. It's you make it sound so trite like that. Like you just made up the rest. Yeah, it wasn't based on years of work and study and thoughts and blah. It's easy to think of the childlike, innocent hobbits as a way for an inventive dad like Tolkien to draw his kids into the adventures of Middle-earth he started creating in 1930. The Hobbit, after all, flowed as as part literary experiment and part bedtime story for young John, Michael, and Christopher. Priscilla was too young. Tolkien wove stories from the boys' days into Bilbo's otherworldly adventures. The Tolkien kids were an integral part of the 8 years it took to complete The Hobbit. They typed up manuscripts for their father and even earned 2 pennies for any error they might find. So is Bilbo simply a stand-in for the Tolkien brood, a humble, innocent, unmagical, and unlikely hero that children can relate to and latch onto? Well, yes and no. Despite having written one of the most famous books in all of children's literature, Tolkien never liked to think of The Hobbit as for kids. For that matter, he hardly thought of children as that different from adults. In a famous lecture and essay titled On Fairy Stories, Tolkien wrote, I think this is an error at best, an error of false sentiment, and one that is therefore most often made by those who, for whatever private reasons, such as childlessness, tend to think of children as a special kind of creature, almost a different race, rather than as normal, if immature members of a particular family and of the human family at large. Hobbits can be seen as proxies for Tolkien's children, but with all things with their author, there's something much darker at play here. Tolkien abhorred any attempts to turn his Middle-earth books into simple allegories for the 2 world wars he lived and wrote through. Still, it's very hard not to see his hobbits as the everyman analogs for the pastoral Brits who were drawn into the horrors of the First World War and then even greater terrors of World War II, as Tolkien and his sons were respectively. In that way, Bilbo of the Hobbit, who is press-ganged into leaving his cozy hobbit hole by a wizard and a pack of dwarves, reminds us of the young J.R.R. Tolkien, who was so reluctant to go off to war at the tender age of 22, he used an academic deferral to delay enlisting. In a 1941 letter to his son, Michael, Tolkien recalled, "In those days, chaps joined up or were scorned publicly. It was a nasty cleft to be in for a young man with too much imagination and little physical courage." A few years later, Tolkien did reluctantly go to war. He wrote, "Junior officers were being killed off a dozen a minute. Parting with my wife then, it was like a death." Again, Tolkien discouraged any attempt to turn his stories into an allegory for just one thing, but on one rare occasion did he offer up an interpretation of the core meaning of the Middle-earth saga. It is about death and the desire for deathlessness. It's an unsurprising preoccupation for a man who reluctantly went to war and survived when so many of his friends and peers didn't. But it's not exactly the stuff bedtime stories were made of. That's where the Hobbits come in. In 1910, Tolkien saw a hugely popular play as an impressionable teen that at the time he wrote was indescribable, but I shall never forget as long as I live. That play was Peter Pan, in which J.M. Barrie's hero, who clings to immortality by refusing to grow up, declares, "To die would be an awfully big adventure." Tolkien would eventually decide that perpetual childhood was not the answer. In a draft of On Fairy Stories, he wrote, quote, "Children are meant to grow up and to die, not to become Peter Pans, a dreadful fate." Still, that idea of turning something feared into, quote, "an awfully big adventure" stuck with Tolkien. With the Hobbits, he could imbue even his darkest fantasies with some light. Bilbo's journey there and back again is a clear, fantastical reflection of Tolkien's own wartime experience. When Tolkien's son Christopher, the one who'd felt most kinship to and closest collaborator in writing The Hobbit, went off to fight in World War II, Tolkien turned his sequel to The Hobbit, originally meant to be about Bilbo setting off to find new treasure, into the story that would eventually become The Lord of the Rings. He wrote it slowly.
But I have to interject right here. Didn't Tolkien famously say multiple times that his experience during the war had nothing to do with his creation?
So this is where I take umbrage with this writer. Is yes, is he? This has been this ongoing back and forth between Tolkien and disciples of Tolkien his whole life and continuing into his death, where yes, he himself always stated that, and yet people can't stop drawing the parallels. Which is why this is so. This author gets so close to getting it right and then gets so wrong because she lends it out. She did details. Oh yeah, Tolkien never thought of this as Allegory. Never wanted to think of this as Allegory. Never wanted to. And then as soon as she details that, yes, you can't just reduce Tolkien into these parts and bits and pieces because he himself said it was much, much more than that. She turns right around and goes, but I'm going to reduce it because clearly it's just that. Clearly all this. Clearly I can tell you exactly why he wrote these things. You're right. You're absolutely right. The way she writes it, he wrote it slowly, as was his way, sending chapters to Christopher as he served overseas with the Royal Air Force. This time it was Bilbo's heir Frodo, whose childlike innocence would be tested by war. Why are you writing this as if you understand what this man is writing about? At its core, The Lord of the Rings, with its unlikely unshakable bond forged by the upper-class hobbit Frodo and his gardener Sam, is an even more direct reflection of the ravages of war and how, in the trenches, Great Britain's rigid class system crumbled. Again, it's reductive and against Tolkien's... It's reductive... She even writes it! Again! It's reductive and against Tolkien's wishes! To see Middle-earth and its players as simple allegory for anything, but it's also impossible to entirely separate Tolkien from Bilbo and Christopher from Frodo, or the idea that the interplay between these two Baggins stands in for a conversation between a World War I veteran father and a World War II soldier's son. You literally just did what you said you shouldn't do. You literally just said, I know it's terrible and awful if we just reduce this to the simple allegory that Tolkien himself said not to do, but I'm going to do it anyway because I want to. And that's what this is. I know it's terrible if we just write all these stupid stories in Middle-earth that are literally just Middle-earth fan fiction that don't follow any lore or mythos whatsoever. But it feels good, so I want to do it anyway. It's like if I went back and wrote the Lord of the Rings fucking fan fiction epic that I wrote after seeing the movies because it so inspired me, and kicked down someone's door and said, make this. This is the greatest bit of Lord of the Rings lore that's ever lived, and you don't know, and fuck you. It's that level of immaturity and thinking that you have some sort of ownership over somebody's work. Because I'm not sitting here trying to say, I know what Tolkien wants better than you. I'm sitting here saying, I know what Tolkien wants because you know what Tolkien wants, because we're both talking about what Tolkien literally said. And yet for some reason, I'm able to sit here and go, yes, you and I are able to sit here and go, yeah, we can clearly see that Tolkien would not want this interpretation. And yet this bitch who thinks of herself as a fan is just sitting here like, no, I'm just going to interpret it this way because I don't give a shit. Who the fuck do you people?
You know what bothers me? It's like there's so many. I mean, go to a bookstore. That's what they should do. They should go to Barnes and Noble. They should walk down the fantasy aisle and see all of these books. Which ones are the top sellers? Which ones, all of this source material. Why don't we just go try something new and try to do it better than Lord of the Rings? Yeah. Why wouldn't they just do that?
That's what I would do personally, because I think you have so many. You had Lord of the Rings, written. It's been out for well over half a century now, and has had over half a century of people writing in its shadow, of young fantasy writers who were inspired by it and wrote to try to write their own fantasy, their own fantasy saga, their own fantasy tale. And if you're too lazy to write your own, those exist exactly on the shelves of any fucking bookstore. And I don't know why they wouldn't take that advice. I don't know why they wouldn't do exactly what you suggest, because to me that makes perfect sense. What the fuck do I know? So now let's conclude. In that way, the Hobbits or Harfoots aren't just a cute opportunity for humor, an audience proxy, and a convenient target for Gandalf's long expository passages about the wider world. They're the beating heart of what is, at the end of the day, a very personal story of two generations that off to die. I never see that. I think this is, again, so reductive, because I don't think that this is. I don't think that it's that one-to-one. Bilbo's Tolkien. Bilbo was J.R.R. and Christopher was Frodo and this and that. Like, there's a lot of self-insert bits of Tolkien himself into a lot of the characters in the Lord of the Rings, and it's just it's so reductive to write about it this way.
I think it's just so obvious this chick doesn't know anything about Lord of the Rings and is writing it.
She read the cliff notes of the appendices in order to do this. Clearly,
yeah.
All right, we catch those super chats here, and then we'll finish with this article, and then we'll put our show to rest. Russell says, "So what you're saying is Elrond got to watch? Yeah, probably. Seems reasonable." Tolkien says that goblins and orcs are the same. Are you positive about that? Am I wrong about that? Because I thought that they were. I did not think they were the same. But
they look clearly different.
They are distinctly visually different. I thought that they're. Now it may just be that's. I know obviously Uruk-hai are a completely different species, but I thought that was that. I thought that was, and maybe it may be that orcs are goblins that have come into the conscription of Sauron, and so over time look different because they are that. And so that may be the only true difference, is that there are a variety of goblin that split off to serve Sauron over time. But I thought they were visually different, even in the books as well. But that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd say your nerd rage is bordering Captain Marvel rage. Well, we're getting there. That's nerd rage activate. You can't not. They can't do anything better because they don't want to. Destroy the past, kill it if you have to. Yep.
Well, yeah, everyone, if you look at the trailer for Lord of the Rings, it's all quoting Tolkien, where it's like evil cannot create, they can only destroy.
Yep.
And it's like in every language.
And you can't create only. It's like, wow, that's, again, their teaser trailer they put out is just verbatim the most famous opening text of the fucking Ring. Like, oh yeah, I can say that in 3 languages. One of them's...
Well, no, like, that's what people are commenting.
Exactly. It's true though, but it's exactly right. Like that's, and the thing is, they already did that too. Saying one ring to rule them all and whispering Ashnag Durbatuluk behind it was done in the Lord of the Rings. That already happened. You already played that gimmick. You don't get to replay it. Look up. Well, I will do that. I was already going to go reread the appendices because I'm that much of a nerd, and it will tell me there. Where's Amanda Pizzolato? She'll tell me, were Tolkien's goblins and orcs identical or not? I trust Amanda. She seems as deep nerd in this as I am.
I was very disappointed when I was watching The Hobbit and they're like, oh, the Goblin King. And my reference for the Goblin King is David Bowie. And we get the guy with like the big saggy neck.
Oh, I love that Goblin King in there, and the way in the animated one where he like comes up to eat Bilbo's head. It's like
When I was in college, one of my professors worked on the Hobbit movies, and he was talking about designing that neck.
That is weird and cool. I dig it. Their creation is covered in the Silmarillion. That's what I thought. Okay, goblins turn to stone in the sunlight. Goblins don't. Trolls turn to stone in the sunlight. Goblins do not, but goblins don't like to come out in the sunlight either. Neither breed actually like to come out in the sunlight. That's why the Uruk-hai were bred, because they travel during the daytime. But yeah, goblins and orcs are all right. Amanda Pizzolato claims goblins and orcs are used interchangeably, so we'll go with her on that. But that's fair. All righty. In a much more superficial way, Hobbits have simply always been the most relatable and identifiable part. It's already you have. Oh, sorry, I skipped something. Oh yeah, the funny thing about The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings is they were never really the stories Tolkien most wanted to write. Remember the Silmarillion, that dense history of Middle Earth? That's the story a Norse and Germanic saga obsessive like Tolkien most wanted to tell. How do you know? Why are you deciding which one he wanted to write? Those intricately detailed mythological backstories of noble heroes, high kings, prophecies, and doomed romances are great fun, especially for those who have already spent some time in Middle-earth. But without the core concept of unlikely heroes awkwardly fumbling their way through the thick of a conflict, the Silmarillion just doesn't have the same irresistible, wildly appealing pull as those Baggins adventures. Tell the truth. They can't use it. They're not using it because they can't. They're not using it because one of the stipulations that the Tolkien Estate actually hung on to after the passing of Christopher was to not fucking let them get a hold of too much of the source material. If they'd actually been following the wishes of the man himself as entrusted to Christopher, this shit never would have happened. He never would have sold it to them. He never would have allowed this shit. I'm pretty sure he's on record somewhere after what they did to the Hobbits stating he would never let them adapt this shit ever again. I don't think you have to assume what this to me. No, you write the adventures because that's the story that comes to you. You write them. You're inspired by the story. After you write the story, you sit and you live in the mythology and you finish crafting the mythology. I don't think Tolkien would have ever had any interest in writing something like the Silmarillion if he didn't have a Lord of the Rings to write it about. You know, it's just the backdrop. It's just the filler for the world. It's just the world building. It's like if you play role-playing games and shit, and you get a big old fucking book that has all the details about the rules and the worlds and the characters and the this and the shit and the that. The Silmarillion is the fucking role-playing guide to Middle-earth for Lord of the Rings. The history, the people, the players, how all the shit went down, you know, what stuff matters. It's somewhere in between like a literal history and a fucking, you know, how to Middle-earth. Anyway, that's in a much more superficial this person. So here, this is their conclusion of this article. It just makes my blood boil. If a Tolkien fan were ever to join in a Middle-earth adventure, they wouldn't be a dashing Aragorn or a regal Galadriel. They probably wouldn't even be fate-stricken Frodo. They might, however, be a loyal Samwise Gamgee who, similar to the curious Harfoot in the Super Bowl teaser, once marveled at the beginning of his adventure in Jackson's films, quote, "If I take one more step, I'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been." Again, McKay and Payne are looking to take viewers on an adventure to new lands from Tolkien's lore and show us those, quote, "wonders beyond our wandering." What better guide than a Hobbit, or rather a Harfoot? That's how you know, right there, that this bitch don't know shit about Lord of the Rings. If a Tolkien fan were ever to join a Middle-earth adventure, they wouldn't be a dashing Aragorn or... How the fuck do you know, bitch? You're just making this assumption that all Tolkien fans are bookish little nerds who at best would be a devoted Samwise Gamgee. This is where this shit gets woke. This is where you get subliminal woke messaging in here, and this shit is legit. It's like, everyone wants to be smoking that, that. This is this last paragraph. The rest of this article was just bullshit. The rest of this article is just some dumb bitch who doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. This right here is pushing wokeness onto its readers. Everyone's a Hufflepuff. Everyone's a bum idiot who's just like everyone else. No, bitch, some of us are special. Some of us are better than that. Some of us are more talented, more interesting, more adventurous, more ambitious, and have got more going on than a fucking Hufflepuff. Not every person who read Lord of the Rings is a Samwise Gamgee. I climb mountains. I fight with swords. Am I a Samwise fucking Gamgee in Lord of the Rings?
I paint pictures.
This shit, though. You'd be an elf. Yeah, you would be a fucking Galadriel. You'd be sitting pretty in a Rivendell or up in the trees in Lothlorien painting beautiful fucking pictures because you'd be a goddamn artist. Like,
I'm a Hobbit. I'm Frodo.
You'd be the Frodo that journeyed to Rivendell and became a fucking artist in Elfland.
You know what's sad is I looked like Frodo when I was a kid. So when we watched Lord of the Rings, they're like, yeah, Anna's like Frodo. Because I had that stupid hair.
Ah, was it all curly too?
Yeah, my hair was really curly when I was little.
According to Anna, Russell Hall would be a troll.
Fuck you, Russell Hall. I have to go. Peaches is bugging me. He wants to go to the gym.
All right. Well, what are your final thoughts on this Lord of the Rings stuff? And I'll let you go, and then I will, for the benefit of the masses, I will yell and scream a little bit longer because I have so many feelings.
This is my thought.
Yeah.
It sucks. It's clear. I mean, I would recommend reading the Vanity Fair article. I don't know if you want to rage a little bit more, even though I have gone. I sent you so they fired their lore expert. They fired their lore expert and they replaced him with this woke whammon, who's all about diversity. And the guy that they fired was the guy that literally wrote the books on Tolkien. And so you might lose your mind, but I do have to go. It was fun. I wish I got to spend more time hanging out with you. I need to create that group chat because me, you, and Kelly need to hang out in person.
Yes.
Sometime soon. But I love you. I missed you. I'm glad that you're back and we got to hang out. And everyone in the chat, I will see you all later. Bye.
Burn. All right. Orcus is another. All right. Fine. You're right, Russell. You're right. Ginger Viking Jesus, my mother came of age reading Lord of the Rings. She loved those novels. I'm hoping she knows nothing of this. I've seen that woman pissed. It's scary. No! Scarier than when I'm mad. Andy McCallum, thank you for the super sticker. It is... Oh, I saw Alexander Leonham was in the chat. I hope you're still in the chat. Because hello, it's nice to see you. Why won't this load now? Now is all right. Black cat, yay! Andy McCallum's the black kitty cat. Thank you, Andy. All righty. I'm fucking sorry. I'm not fucking sorry because here's the problem, right? This is what happened with the fucking world. Everyone wants to be Aragorn. Yeah, that's true. Everyone wants to be Aragorn. Everyone wants to be Harry Potter or Hermione. No one wants to be fucking Neville, even though he's actually a Gryffindor and ends up being kind of cool. No one wants to be a fucking Hufflepuff. Nobody wants to be a fucking Hobbit, this, that, and the other. We spend our lives as kids, no matter what we end up being. We spend our lives growing up wanting to be those things, but not all of us get to be. Most of us do. Therein is the fallacy, right? That's where the fallacy comes in. Y'all bitches are like, well, we'd just be Hufflepuffs. No, you'd be muggles. You would be fucking muggles. You are not magical enough to be a fucking magical person. You lack the imagination, the open-mindedness, the worldliness to live in a magical fucking world where things beyond the scope of your immediate understanding and ability to touch make fucking sense to you. You don't get to go to Middle-earth. Your ass doesn't even get to be a Sam Gamgee in the story. You think, oh, I'll just be the Samwise. Samwise fucking Gamgee is an extraordinary human character, creature, hobbit, being, soul. Samwise fucking Gamgee has more integrity than anybody else in all of Middle-earth. Samwise Gamgee is described in the book as being so noble and pure that the Ring of Power, the most evil object ever to exist, holds absolutely no sway over him. You're not Sam fucking Gamgee, bitch. You're not even close. If you're lucky, you're Rosie fucking Cotton that Sam Gamgee comes back to at the end of his own goddamn adventure. Your ass is some dumb hobbit kid licking your own toe cheese in the fucking Shire. You were played by one of the little New Zealand extra kids who fished eels out of the lake in front of the party tree while they were setting up for that fucking scene. That's a cool story I learned when I was there. Just because all you assholes, all you social justice entitled motherfuckers grew up and found out that you were a goddamn muggle and weren't fucking happy about it doesn't mean you got to ruin the role models for the rest of us, because that's it. You realize one day Luke Skywalker wasn't put on Earth for you. Frodo wasn't put on Earth on you for you. Harry Potter wasn't put on Earth to inspire people like you. They were put on Earth to make you feel good during your childhood and to let you grow up with that little nugget and memory of happiness as you go on to live your miserable, boring adult lives. Those characters were put on Earth for people like me, for people like Anna, for people like Jeff, for the rest of you out there working on your ambitions, on your channels, on your greatness. Maybe yet to come. Maybe you haven't even started reaching for it yet, but it's still the fuck out there. That is who those characters are for. They're for us. They're for the people who say, I'm not a muggle. I do not accept the status quo. I do not accept whatever is force fucking fed to me. Those characters are written for us, for the people who do chase our dreams, who do become extraordinary, who do set foot out of our door, whether by force or by our own choice, and go on that hero's journey and see it through to its fucking completion. That's who those characters are for. And if you grow up and you can't deal with the fact that you're just the guy who got shot when Darth Vader boarded your fucking ship at the beginning of A New Hope, you're not Han Solo. If you can't handle that fact, deal with that on your own time. Don't take the Han Solos and the Luke Skywalkers and the Aragorns and the Frodos and the fucking heroes away from the rest of us just because you're miserable that you'll never get to be one because you don't have the strength of character. And all you do when you tear down the rest of us that do and you take the things away from us that inspire us and our future generations is prove how weak and pathetic you really are. I will not watch this television show because I know enough from this. I know from this fact that they fired a fucking legitimate Tolkien historian, in favor of some dumb social justice bitch who will walk their narrative. They fired the person who would stand up to them and say, this isn't right, this doesn't make sense. In favor, of the person who will say, yeah, sure, whatever's going to make people feel good and make you money, whatever will be sensitive. That's what I need to know about this show. I know that this show is not being created with any intention whatsoever of respecting the legacy of one of the greatest authors to ever have walked this earth. I fucking know that. I don't need to be told that. I don't need to watch the show to see that. This is not one of those instances where I need to watch, I need to wait and see to see if they do it justice or not. I have already read straight from the showrunners' fucking mouths that they think they can do the Second Age of Middle-earth better than Tolkien did. I don't fucking need this. I don't need this fucking show from them. And I will consistently remind all of you why it is wrong for it to exist, why it is a bastardization of Tolkien's legacy, words, hydration, interrupted train of thought. This is evil. This is bad. This is not okay. It is, yes, I don't need to watch it to continue to remind you why it is very, very crystal clear that this is a bastardization of this legacy. Why would you want an expert when you just can have somebody who just says fucking yes to you? Tolkien lived that life. Tolkien was the reluctant hero, the veteran. Thank you, Callum. And Tolkien was a vet, serving the First World War with allies of many cultures. He knew what true courage was. And he knew what it meant to fight for the freedoms of different people. He knew what it meant to fight alongside cultures that looked very different from himself. John Thomas, I grew up seeing Frodo Lives graffiti. Dude, that is awesome. And for us to be here, I mean, I'm disappointed and I'm not going to watch. I will read synopses and tell you why everything is wrong in accordance to the lore. But I will not watch. Okay. So that's okay. That's upsetting. That's really upsetting to me. Okay. Let's see if I can find this Vanity Fair one. Do you guys want me to go through this real quick so we can have more rage? One in the chat if you guys want me to go through the full Vanity Fair interview and yell and scream. And don't if you don't. Just age yourself, John Thomas. That's okay. I think that's just awesome. I'm jealous. I'm jelly. Oh God. Okay. Hashtag Hobbit musing of the day. This is from your new consultant. This is a tweet from your new consultant here. You ready? Hashtag Hobbit musing of the day. In The Hobbit, Gollum is described as dark as darkness. What is this supposed to mean? And yes, I am wondering here about the limits between metaphorical and the racial. Today's hashtag Hobbit musing. The Hobbit describes Elrond as noble and fair in race as an elf lord. But what does that actually mean? Unless one already knows what an elf lord looks like, how are we supposed to imagine the specific nobility and physical fairness? That's upsets. That's upsets. Okay. So, thank you, Ginger Monkey Jesus. Jesse's legit breathing fire. I can feel that heat from the East Coast. Well, call me smog. All right. Black Golem confirmed. I mean, literally, it's just gonna. Okay, shut up, Vanity Fair. Don't be proud of how you're giving me this one for free. I don't fucking care. It's like this one's on us, but you have to pay if you want to read anymore. Well, I don't. I actually don't at all. Vanity Fair, you can fuck yourself. Okay. I need more water if I'm gonna keep spitting fire. Showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay dive deeper into the details of the lavish Lord of the Rings TV series. 10 burning questions about Amazon's The Rings of Power. It looks fake. The water looks terrible. Like the blue part, the waterfall looks good, but the blue part, the trees, the white, it stands out so much to the point where it's like the white trees stick out more than the white elves standing in these rings here. I know Anna was like, yeah, it looked pretty. I'm like, no, it looks pretty for a painting. If you showed me this and you were like, okay, this was somebody's like digital painting of a scene from Lord of the Rings, I'd be like, wow, that's so beautiful. But if you're like, yeah, this is a literal scene from a live action TV show of Lord of the Rings, I want to stab my eyes out. Oh, God. Okay. Oh my God, special offer. I can get 1 year of Vanity Fair for $15 and a free tote. Oh my God, just for like $89 shipping. Oh my God. Last week, Vanity Fair exclusively unveiled the first look at a number of characters and locations for Prime Video's The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power series. J.R.R. Tolkien fans got another good look at this new Middle-earth story when the first teaser debuted during the spring Super Bowl this Sunday. Now showrunners Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne offer up even more details and insights and answer some of the more urgent questions Tolkien fans have been asking about the series set in Middle-earth's second age, long before Bilbo and Frodo Baggins went adventuring. Wow, I don't talk that fast anymore. Let's all take a moment to be proud of the fact that Jessie doesn't talk that fast anymore in her daily life. Yeah, I want a weird crossover universe in which that is only a painting of a Lord of the Rings set that existed. Somebody painted after the books came out, and then Bob Ross did that from one of his shows. That would be tight. Okay. Do. Make sure I actually can understand what I'm reading. All right, so what do we got here? Blah, 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 blah. A battle scene in the Rings of Power. So, okay, I have some questions. Will it look like Lord of the Rings? In creating this new story, McKay and Payne's goal was, in McCain's word, quote, different but familiar. While the series is not a precise continuation of Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings, it shouldn't clash with the cinematic world fans have come to know and love. Because the cinematic world doesn't largely conflict with Tolkien's universe. Therefore, the TV show shouldn't conflict with Tolkien's universe. Read the article like you were comparing Carrick of Lady the Manager. All right, Toxic Masculinity, you got it. Okay. Actors like Morfydd Clark and Robert R. Mayo were cast in part because they could age into the older versions played respectively by Cate Blanchett and Hugo Weaving in Jackson's films. They should already be those versions. They're already fully grown. This should already be pretty close to those versions. Even Benjamin Walker, who plays Gil Galad, bears a striking resemblance to Mark Ferguson, who appeared as the Elven King in a non-speaking cameo in the Fellowship of the Rings prologue. Why? Like, who cares? Okay. It's worth remembering, if only for legal reasons, that this is not the exact same world. The production design, though similar, is not trying to match Jackson's films. For example, King Elendil's legendary broken sword, Narsil, which debuted in one of Prime Video's promotional posters, does not look identical to the one eventually reforged and used by Viggo Mortensen with Aragorn in Return of the King. Yes. Because those are different swords. Because they're different fucking swords. Because one is Narsil and one is Anduril. And when you reforge a sword, you change it. They probably did something to the hilt in the process. At least re-wrapped it or re-leathered it. So the fact that it should look a little different is like, I mean, it should. It should look a little different. But also, of course, they're going to change it. They can't sell new toys and new prop replicas if they don't change it. and why are these the important part of what why would that be? Okay. Mm-hmm. The Amazon show has an advantage in that its prime locations like Numenor, the elven cities of Lindon and Eregion, and the intact dwarven city of Khazad-dûm didn't play into Jackson's films. In The Rings of Power, one of the most identifiable Middle-earth landmarks, the Great Tower of Barad-dûr, where Sauron's flaming eyeball sits, hasn't been built yet, nor has the Black Gate of Mordor or the Doors of Durin. The Rings of Power costume designer Kate Hawley, who worked on Jackson's Hobbit film as well as Guillermo del Toro's lavish Crimson Peak, is creating Middle-earth fashions that existed thousands of years before Liv Tyler's Arwen draped herself in endless velvet. Okay. But we do know a little bit of what that looked like because, again, we had flashbacks to understand what that era looked like. Also, that makes me unhappy that it's somebody who worked on the costuming and stuff for The Hobbit and with Guillermo del Toro, because it tells me that they work with Guillermo del Toro's artistic vision. And I felt that Guillermo del Toro's artistic vision clashed with Tolkien's universe. And that was one of the things that largely compromised. Yeah, excellent point, Katie. Why are they focusing on film differences and not book differences? This is, again, because they're pandering to their audience. What are audiences? We're pandering to our stupidest common denominator, the morons who only saw the movies and never read the fucking books. Well, it's not going to look the same, so we need to explain to you we need to explain these little details as to why it's not quite the same, so you don't get your panties in a wad and cry about it, because that's what we're concerned with. Let me read this two-parter from Annie McCallum. Thank you. Thank you very much. Part 1 of 2. Water, when it's allowed to flow, a stream of water flows nicely. It's clean. The water is crystal-like sometimes. Clean and vibrant. You can drink it if it's fresh. When it's, or you can drink it, it's fresh because it's flowing. When it stagnates, when it stops, when it shrinks, it becomes a puddle. It's dirty, stagnant, undrinkable. That's how I sum this up. That is an excellent, yep. This is a dirty puddle. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that metaphor works on so many levels too, when you think about it, because it's like, what is the goal? What is the intention? The intention used to be with creating something like a film, right? Like an adaptation from a novel. Let's take the novel. Let's pull everything we can. That the novel is the snow melt at the top of the mountain, and we melt off from that. And we have everything we need in the snow melt. The snow melt is going to fill our reservoir, right? That's everything we need in the original novel right there. We just melt it from there and let it all flow. Boom. But instead, what we've done is gone, we have everything we need from the snow melt, but instead of doing that, let's just scoop up a little bit of the stream that's already run so far from the melt, and let's just take it over here and let's just plop it in some mud and keep drinking it and see how it tastes. Yeah, not fucking great. Hawley is in the overlap between the Jackson era and this one. John Howe, a beloved conceptual designer who worked on the films, lent his talent to the Rings of Power. We were very lucky to have some alums that experience in Middle-earth come back in, said Payne. We were the beneficiaries of their experience, having worked in Middle-earth before. We reached out to Peter Jackson, but between COVID and his schedules and our schedules, didn't manage to actually ever get together for coffee, but certainly would love to at some point. Peter Jackson doesn't want anything to fucking do with this project. Don't. Peter Jackson wants to be involved with this TV show like fucking George Lucas wanted to be involved with the sequel movies, all right? And you can believe about that what you will, but, you know. McKay adds, our only relationship is as big fans and admirers. No shit. The pair were quick to point out that the Jackson films were not only their inspiration. Quote, the universe that this show wants to be in is Tolkien's, and that's an umbrella over Peter's films and Led Zeppelin, John Howe's paintings, and the Hobbit cartoon, McKay says. Okay, but I don't understand what that has to do with anything. Oh god, that's horrible with Galadriel again. This picture was altered from the one that we saw in the other article, because that article was just trying to point it out exactly as it was. This one was purposely darkened and recolored and altered to look better for this article because it's a positive spin. Interesting how that looks. We can pull up a side-by-side later if y'all don't believe me. How much CGI should audiences expect? As fans will already have seen in the Super Bowl teaser, there are plenty of innovative digital effects in the Rings of Power, But there's been a recent movement led by Lucasfilm and Star Wars in both genre and filmmaking and its fandom away from an over-reliance on digital effects. That perceived over-reliance was something fans disliked in Jackson's Hobbit trilogy. Yes, but it already looks worse in this one in the tiny bit we've already seen. McCain had... McCain and Payne had a keen interest in practical effects in real-world locations, which didn't always align with their quote, with their parenthetical, admittedly enormous budget. Bullshit! Bullshit! You have a $1 billion budget. $1 billion fucking dollars to make this show. And you're really... Also, practical locations are usually cheaper than CGI. Practical effects, anyway. An example, because of Doom, Payne said, the duo wanted to shoot the Dwarven mining city under an actual mountain in New Zealand. Quote, there's this place called the Lost World that is this whole ecosystem is absolutely crazy. Payne says, the practicalities of trying to spelunk their cast and 300 crew members soon put that idea to rest. Instead, they built a lavish version on a soundstage. That's not an example. That's not an example, though. Because you just said they had a keen interest in using practical effects and real-world locations. So now you're just telling us about a time they couldn't use a real-world location, so they instead just built a replica, i.e. doing the practical effect version of creating the location. So that is not an example of a time where they cut corners and used CGI because they couldn't do what they wanted to. That is just a smokescreen example. So we dig into the deeper thing here, which is that, again, bullshit. Like, oh, we literally had $1 billion budget and we're claiming budget as a reason why we had to use so much CGI. Fuck you. You're lying. McKay said, all right, but in dreaming of wild, fantastical monsters and ambitious real-world locations, McCain and Payne learned the trickiest challenge of making Middle-earth show lay elsewhere. Payne recalls their visual effects coordinator saying, quote, do you want to know the single most complicated scene you've written in season 1 is it's a scene where the elf and the dwarf walk down a hallway together. McCain says you have to shoot everything twice. It ends up being like an SAT problem where a hobbit and a dwarf and a man and an elf each leave a train station driving X miles per hour. Who's going to get to Mount Doom first? So it'll be down to the millimeter, mimicking the exact same moves, and the two things that splice together and create the effect of one person being taller and smaller. We have a group of actual wizards that work on the show, and they came up with a huge bag of tricks in which you're constantly able to give the audience guessing. But that's not how they did it. Like, you only have that problem if your hallway is CGI. If it's not, you can just use forced perspective. Like, here's a great trick. If you need to show a dwarf and an elf walking down a hallway together, don't show their legs. Have one of them walk on a dolly track, or have one of them walk on a raised platform, and have one of them walk. You have the elf walk closer to you, the dwarf walk further away. You have one on a raised platform, and the perspective shooting makes the size differences look proportionate for what they are. Actually, the dwarf closer, so his features look bigger, even though he still looks shorter. It is not that hard, and it's much cheaper, by the way, than CGIing the hallway and doing 3 different composite passes that you have to composite together. You build a platform, you figure out your... People love to say these things to prove that they're full of shit. Like, the oldest trick in the book. I'm in a room that's too big. I need to make it look smaller. I'm going to pull the couch forward. Because the perspective that you get in a camera, unless you're shooting in 3D, unless you're shooting in an angle that actually shows the space between the couch and the wall, your eye can't distinguish. If it is mocked up to fool the eye into thinking that the couch is against the wall, and everybody walks and interacts with the space as if the couch is against the wall, you will think the couch is against the wall, even if it's been pulled forward to make the space look infinitely more cramped. This is actually something interesting. Somebody I wanted to reach out to. I don't have a way to contact them, but I'll find out because I was watching somebody's video the other day in our community, and I was like, oh, this person has a really great setup and a really great spread behind them, but they don't understand the lineups of cinema. So they have themselves lined up. Their eyes are center in their shot. And you see how just when I drop myself down here, there's too much empty space up here. You want the rule of thirds. So I got my thirds this way, my thirds this way. I want my head to be up. So my eye line is roughly at the third line. So even if I'm lined up center screen, if I'm doing my job really well, I actually want to be here or here for the most visually appealing way to do a shot, but it doesn't always work as well. Now, I'm doing it really, really right. My microphone here, so I can face my microphone and set up like this. And what I'd actually want to do is talk to my microphone and only kind of sort of talk at you guys sometimes if I actually set up a shot like this. But we're doing face on. Anyway, so I wanted to tell that person, I was like, look, I know everything looks right to your eye the way it's set up here, but you're going to need to lower that shelf in the background and pull everything in together. So if somebody were to walk in the room, your display would look awkwardly cramped right around one specific spot. But when you put it on camera, that's all you see. And that's all that matters. Are you performing for a live audience in your office or you're performing for your camera? So yeah, people have used forced and tricked perspectives since before we were using digital film. People have used these techniques to create amazing effects since film was done on celluloid. I'm not buying this bullshit. These are lies. These are just lies that they are telling us. Like, yeah, okay, I understand that you, like, again, not lies that you just shoot it all 3 times. You shoot it twice and composite and do this and blah, blah, blah. I believe you did that. But it's not because there wasn't an easier way. It's because you elected to do CGI. Anyway. Some strange monsters may be digital confections. I already saw one. It looked retarded. But when orc-like baddies attack rings of power heroes, it's guys in suits, not piles of pixels. Well, thank God for that, at least. What exactly is the source material here? Yes, what exactly? So what did Amazon buy? Quote, we have the rights solely to the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, the Return of the King, the Appendices, and the Hobbit, Payne says. And that's it. We do not have the rights to the Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, the History of Middle-earth, or any of those books. That takes a huge chunk of lore off the table and has left Tolkien fans wondering how this duo plans to tell a Second Age story without access to those materials. By completely bastardizing it. So this is their approach. Their approach is because we're not allowed to use the history of the Second Age in our Second Age, we're just going to pretend like we canceled it. Pretend like we have the authority to act like it doesn't exist and rewrite the history of Tolkien's Second Age. Fuck you. Fuck this article. Fuck these people. I can't even make a video about this tonight. I'm gonna just sit on this for a night. I would just like rage. I wouldn't even be full sentences. I wouldn't even know how to organize my thoughts right now. Each new thing just makes me want to kill more people. There's a version of everything we need for the Second Age in the books we have the rights to, McKay says. As long as we're painting within those lines and not egregiously contradicting something we don't have the rights to, you already are. There's a lot of leeway and room to dramatize and tell some of the best stories that Tolkien ever came up with. No, there's not. We took all these little clues and thought of them as the stars in the sky that we then connected to write the novel that Tolkien never wrote about the Second Age. No, you didn't! Why can't you just say, we inherited this shit and so we wrote a Lord of the Rings story that we thought you would like? Why do you gotta say shit like we wrote the story we thought we wrote the novel that Tolkien would have but never did? No, you didn't! You are not J.R.R. fucking Tolkien! Stop acting like you are! This is my problem! This is my fucking problem with the whole thing! With this whole fucking thing! Is people acting like they get to be like this, and again, with the fucking going back to the Hufflepuffs and the this and that. You're not J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm not J.R.R. Tolkien. I would never try to be. I would never fucking pretend to be. You are, none of you are. And you can't put 20 of you in a room together and come up with something half as fucking brilliant. Acknowledge the brilliance. Accept and acknowledge that J.R.R. Tolkien was a singularly brilliant person who did things in writing and fantasy that no other human being ever could and probably ever will. And don't fucking sit here with your smug little stupid smiles on your fucking faces, acting like, oh yeah, we're just gonna write the next J.R.R. Tolkien epic. How many thousands of people thought they were doing that before you and fucking failed? What makes you any different? News fucking flash, nothing. Your ass is gonna fall just like everyone who flew too close to the sun did. Fuck you, you fucking assholes. Jeff Bezos needs to die. I hate Jeff Bezos so much. Panza, all right, so we took the little clues, blah, blah, blah. The duo cites songs like The Fall of Gil-galad, the Song of Arendelle, fellowship chapters like The Council of Elrond. Oh, my favorite chapter ever. That took me years to get through the first time I read it. And The Shadow of the Past, the concerning Hobbit section of the prologue as sources for significant lore dumps. Beyond the premiere, there aren't, however, any significant time jumps or thus far episode-long journeys into the past. The rights to the first age material from the Silmarillion are still owned by the Tolkien Estate. We worked in conjunction with the world-renowned Tolkien scholars and the Tolkien Estate to make sure that the ways we connected the dots were Tolkienian and gelled with the experts and the estate's understanding of the material. Well, you did it wrong. And again, stop lying. There's a reason you couldn't do this until after Christopher Tolkien died. There's a reason this all suddenly very rapidly happened and happened in this way after Christopher Tolkien died. Because you're respecting the wishes of the estate, you had to wait till the fucking person who understood the estate fucking died so you could take it away from them. Only his good friend C.S. Lewis could compare. That's an excellent, that's a pretty lateral move right there. Even then, though, I really think Tolkien, I think C.S. Lewis is a close second when it comes to all-time fantasy writers. In terms of the depth, the level of allegory, the and the endurability, C.S. Lewis is right up there. Until they fired the Tolkien scholar. You're right. We worked. Notice, we worked in conjunction with world-renowned Tolkien scholars, and then you fucking fired him so that you could have Princess Dissa, Princess Dizbitch. Will it sound like The Lord of the Rings? Nope. Jackson and his team had the advantage of working up Tolkien's novels and could lift long passages of dialogue straight from the source, but McKay and Payne are building the story from sparser material. Here's where their love for Tolkien's language came into play. We start every single day of our writer's room with a quote from the books. Every day in production, a quote from the books gets emailed out. The season 1 writers' room was packed with talented minds, blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. The people who, people who fucked up Game of Thrones. Somebody who worked on Ragnarok. Great. Somebody who worked on Star Trek Discovery. Who is calling me? No, buddy. I'll catch you later. In studying the language from the first 3 episodes, Amazon let Vanity Fair screen. We found a mix of cleverly repurposed lines of Tolkien's dialogue, as well as a few snatches of biblical text. Both Patrick and I have religious backgrounds, Payne said. I spent a lot of time just reading those sacred texts. I was an English major at Yale and loved Shakespeare at the time, and still go back and reread the various plays. I've also spent a lot of time studying Hebrew poetry and parallelism and inverted parallelism and chiasmus and all these cool rhetorical. Fuck you! You pretentious douchebag! You're just dropping words. He's literally just dropping literary devices. And I studied Hebrew poetry and parallelism and inverted parallelism and chiasmus and metaphor and alliteration and punctuation and commas and capitalization of proper nouns. Parallelism, that's literally, he's acted. I studied all these fancy things like Hebrew poetry and Shakespeare and alliteration and similes. That's what he's doing. Like, parallelism and inverted parallelism are literary devices, and chiasmus too. Chiasmus, where were you studying chiasmus? Where does that exist in the English language? Chiasmus is a literary device that you almost always see in Greek or Latin or languages with more similar roots, or more laws they follow more stringently with their roots. Because chiasmus is the use in, I guess you can use it in English, but it's weirder. Chiasmus is when you take 2 sentences, 2 verses of poetry stacked on top of each other, and they're framed so that the devices make a literal X. Like if you were to draw a line from the comparable parts of speech, you would create an X. So it's like, I don't know, if you were gonna write, it's really hard to think of a quality example in English because you don't really use it because it doesn't work well with the language in English. But it would be like, if I were to say, and the beautiful crown of gold sat atop her head, blah 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 blah, and then the next line, the beautiful gold crown. You know, like it's that, like calling it the crown of gold on one line and then the gold crown. And then visually the crown shows up here and gold shows up here and here. And so if you were to connect those 2 words, it creates that X. Or like you have the adjective here, noun here, noun here. So it's something that's literally something as that. So it's like the crown of gold sat atop her flowing head. and the yellow leaves danced in her blah, blah, blah. That's chiasmus, because crown of gold, yellow leaves, yellow crown, those are the adjectives, gold and blah. It's just a really, exactly, it's pretentious jargon. It's like, I might make a video just on this particular sentence because that's how much it bothers me. And then like parallelism and inverted parallelism. Like, I don't know. Are you talking about parts of, again, like, or what are you just saying? Are you talking about parallelism? Because at first when he said, when you're talking about Hebrew poetry and parallelism, okay, you're talking about abstract parallelism. You're talking about parallelism as a larger theme in, no, that's what it is. Is he learned? That's why he's dropping all this word salad now. Is Hebrew was probably the only language that he studied in college that had the type of syntax structure where chiasmus and parallelism and inverted parallelism. So I'm assuming, if I remember correctly, I believe that's just some things like just that. It sounds like a songwriting trick. Exactly. It's verse. It's lyrical wordplay. So he drops in that he studied Hebrew poetry because he thinks he's so fucking smart, because he knows that unless you've studied Hebrew poetry or Greek poetry or Latin poetry or probably Chinese poetry too, actually. Yeah, definitely Chinese poetry. I think parallelism is actually really big in Chinese poetry, because parallelism then is when one line directly mirrors the line above it. So they work in parallel. The same syntax, the same, depends. You could the same verse structure, like the same flow. Da 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 da. Whereas the inverse would then be da 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 da. You say, so the reverse flow, or like if I wrote this sentence to be, action, to have this verse has 3 clauses. I do the exposition, the aside, and the action, and then the next one I'll do the action, the aside, the exposition. So that's just, again, parallelism, inverted parallelism. It's just, again, it's like it was important to me to take the time to explain this, because you drop all these words here assuming that somebody else is not going to understand this, and I just needed to stop for a second to explain to this Vanity Fair fucker, to JD Payne. Yeah, I don't give a shit that you studied poetry at Yale. I understand everything you're trying to say, and it's just bullshit. And all these cool rhetorical strategies that poets and prophets from thousands of years ago would use to communicate sacred material. And Tolkien sometimes will play in that kind of sandbox. Parallelism and inverted parallelism and chiasmus exist in the Aeneid and the Iliad and the fucking fucking Metamorphosis as much as they do in your fucking sacred text. Chiasmus isn't a fancy fucking magical tool that they use to convey sacred language. It's a fucking literary device the same way a fucking simile or alliteration is. Get off your fucking high horse. It's like normal speech followed by Yoda speech, right? Exactly. Fuck you. You think you're so fucking smart. All right, Rosie Cotton's little sister. Jesus Christ. McKay explains that they tailored the dialogue to fit each kind of character. The Harfoots speak with an Irish lilt. Why? Whereas the elves speak in elevated British phrases. We even came up with hero meters for each different race in Tolkien. Payne says some of them will speak in iamb, some of them will speak in dactyls, some of them will speak in trochees. Oh, God. This is going to be so pretentious. That in-depth approach might please Professor Tolkien, whose specialty was philology. Sound language. Yes. Philology. Okay. Tolkien was not a poet. He wrote prose. Why do you think that turning every bit of his character's dialogue into poetry would please him? Why wouldn't you think that writing in a way that was true to the actual history of his universe would please him more? You're so fucking concerned about pleasing a fucking dead man who never even wrote poetry. I mean, yes, there were poems in his things. Where do iambs and dactyls and also, again, bullshit. If your characters speak in dactyls, then they all speak like this because the dactyl is just fucking, anyway, sorry. Board speech, dactyls a bit. Also, iambs have, anyway, okay. Also more bullshit. Yes, Tolkien did again. So Tolkien would come up poems, songs. See, he said nobody in Middle Earth fucking talks in poetry. This is not a dactyl and a trochee are parts that make up a verse. And iamb is made up of dactyls and trochees. And a trochee is the long, a dactyl is the short. That's it. That's all there really is in lyric verse. Trochees and dactyls. That's all it is. An iamb is a trochee followed by a dactyl, followed by a trochee, a dactyl followed by a trochee. Da-da, 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 da-da. Dactyl is short, trochee is long. So an iamb is just da-da. Iambic pentameter, 5 da-das. Da-da, 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 da-da. That's Shakespeare. They're thinking linguists and poets are the same. I know! Because you're so stupid. And this goes back to exactly what Andy says about the stagnant water. Oh, philology. Tolkien was a philologist, a linguist. Tolkien studied language. That's his iceberg. That's his snow melt at the top of the fucking mountain, is all of Tolkien's wide, vast knowledge of linguistics and language. This fucker studied poetry and Shakespeare and thinks that he understands linguistics to the depths that Tolkien did because he understands fucking poetry. There are so many parts of speech that Tolkien used in his writing, very few that are singular to poetry because he didn't write in verse. Literary devices for poetry are specifically designed to be used with verse made up of, yes, trochees and dactyls, Mr. Genius asshole over there, like an iamb, which is made up of trochees and dactyls. I'm literally going to make an entire video about how stupid J.D. Payne says, regurgitating all his nonsense. I learned this at Yale mumbo jumbo poetry bullshit. Oh my fucking God, I'm gonna have a fucking field day with this shit. You are a moron. I hate this guy now too. Okay, but will it feel like Lord of the Rings? Nope. I suppose that's up to you to decide, but McKay and Payne have spent a long time thinking about Tolkien's themes. McKay points out that Peter Jackson nailed exactly the tone they're chasing. Quote, what I loved about those first 3 films in particular was Peter and his collaborators captured a unique blend of tones that Tolkien uses in his characters and his worlds. It's heartfelt, but complex and political. It's dark and intense, but also whimsical and funny and sweet. It's very rare to find an author who, in any medium, tries to play every note on the piano. Sometimes it's suspenseful, sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's esoteric and complexly wild and imaginative. It's also very funny, too, at times. But it's all Middle Earth, as they say briefly there. I mean, that's what Peter's was. I don't know what yours is, but, you know. That's Prince Durin. So this is what Prince Durin is gonna look like. I don't know why his face why his beard is so airbrushed here. Without the airbrushed beard, he does look like a Tolkien dwarf. No complaints there. Kind of wild haired for a prince. I don't know the context. I don't know if he's supposed to be, like braided and kempt right here, or if there's a reason he's just throwing it out. It doesn't seem like a dwarf prince would throw it out, but what do I know? I think that's the problem, though, is like we're already seeing them with the tweets that their fucking new historian or their new Tolkien expert is pumping out. We're already seeing that this show is a slave to the popular narrative. It's art, and of course, with its we can put different colors, we can put black people in here, we can make different colored people in here, and putting this shit out. You're already a slave to popular narrative, so you're already intrinsically failed at doing what Peter Jackson was able to do. Peter Jackson was able to bring Tolkien's world to life outside of any attachment to whatsoever to the present world politics, to modern day politics, because he understood intrinsically that no matter how many real world references, no matter how many overarching themes from the Great Wars may have made their way into Tolkien's work, that it was set and rooted solely in Middle Earth, and that place, as much as it may have in common and be based off of Europe, isn't here. It isn't here. He's going to be a very young Durin, though. That's the thing. Like, how old do dwarves live? Because I didn't think dwarves lived that long. And unless it's a different Durin, I mean, look, it could be the predecessor of the Durin, who's the father of Balin, who's the who's of the Fellowship, because Balin is part of the Hobbit company, and Balin is son of Durin, and unless dwarves lived a much longer life than I was aware of. I know they live a long time, but I thought it was like hobbits, where well into their hundreds was Aragorn died, and Gimli was still alive when Aragorn died in his hundreds. In the succession, that's what I was trying to remember, though, is how the succession of that lineage went in Khazad-dûm, because he should, I mean, from what we know of the show, they've built Khazad-dûm. He should be the Durin king of Khazad-dûm, but there may have been more Durins in that line. It's been a while since I've read those appendices. There may have been another Durin further back in the line, but I don't think it would have been the same one for the second, because hundreds of years, but I thought dwarves lived hundreds of years, but not thousands. So he can't be, he's supposed to be the fourth Durin 4. Okay, yeah, there you go. So this has to be an earlier Durin, then. This may be the original one, I guess. Yeah, that point of order. But yeah, no, this is not going to feel like Middle Earth, because it already has too many influences from our Earth in it. Did Vanity Fair make an error in calling the Dwarven prince Durin IV? Nope. Well, that's answer your question. The red-bearded Owain Arthur, photographed by Vanity Fair's deep dive into the Rings of Power, is Prince Durin IV. But Tolkien scholars will cry out it was Durin III who was given one of the Rings of Power by Sauron. Yes, King Durin III is also in the show, and he's portrayed by someone who knows something about playing a bad dad. In Tolkien's words, Durin 3 and 4 are not father and son, and the title of Durin is more complicated than, or in Tolkien's works, Durin 3 and 4 are not father and son. Yeah, it's supposed to be like whatchamacallit, Caesar's, Julius and Augustus. But remember, McKay and Payne are compacting thousands of years in the second son. They're not father and son. The title of Durin is more complicated than just. Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, not that. Okay, so yeah, okay, so that's okay. Hold on, reset, rebrain. Yes. So, who's a bad dad? I don't care about that teaser. Anyway. So, they are just making shit up at this point, because Durin 3... Yeah, okay, this is supposed to be Durin the fourth king of Khazad-dûm at the height of its power. Okay. And that's not till... I thought the height of Khazad-dûm's greatness wasn't till the Third Age, though. Because yeah, sorry, no, this is different than even that too. Then I remember, yeah, Durin 4 is the father of Balin, right? Durin 3 is the one who receives the ring. There should be generations in between them. There's no way this Durin lives thousands of years and is still the king of Khazad-dûm, like, to pass it on to Balin somewhere around the First Age. Because remember, Balin, at the time that Balin is off on an adventure to go steal Smaug's treasure, Durin 4 is still the king of Khazad-dûm. Yes, the height of Khazad-dûm, the heyday of Khazad-dûm was right before the Balrog destroyed it. That's why Gimli thought he was going to take them to Roaring Fires and this and that. Khazad-dûm is a later Dwarven kingdom. Now, I don't know when they officially settled it or came in there, but it's definitely, in terms of it being, now it may have been a previous one they came back to as well, but the height of Khazad-dûm, where Durin 4, so again, Durin 4 is still the king of Khazad-dûm. I know this is getting bogged down, all the crazy details, but Durin 4 is still the king of Khazad-dûm when Balin is off getting Smaug's treasure, because he's not the king of Khazad-dûm, because otherwise he would already be in charge of his kingdom, then not still, wanting to go off and have grand adventures, or at least I'm pretty sure that is the case. And then after the war, the Battle of the Five Armies, maybe Journey's even the king yet. Maybe then they go and inherit. I got to go back and figure out exactly when and what happened. But I know that the height of, Moria is in its height in the third. I don't even know when they start. Do they even start mining Moria until the Third Age? Because I thought that was kind of the whole thing, though. That's why Balin was off adventuring and not just happily inheriting a giant kingdom, is that, there isn't really a great kingdom of Khazad-dûm yet. That's still maybe being worked on or finished or whatever. And so there's still a reason to go get riches and treasures and stuff to bring, to the height of Moria, etc. So to go back, I'm going to brush up on all this stuff real quick. I will know this even more back and forwards once I reread those appendices. So lies. McKay and Payne are compacting thousands of years of Tolkien. You can't do that, though. You can't. You cannot. That's. Why are you doing that? Why aren't you just writing a story that takes place over the course of 100 years and is completely inconsequential? Why are you trying to tell the entire story of the Second Age in one fucking TV show? The whole fucking Second Age, when you don't even have access to the number one text that was the history of it. This is so stupid. The Silmarillion catalogs the full history of the Second Age. Of all the ages of Middle-earth, but so the complete history of the Second Age exists in the Silmarillion. They only have access to the Cliff Notes version, the appendices that you find at the end of the Return of the King. And so it's like taking the Cliff Notes version and trying to use that to rewrite the whole thing. It's like saying I'm going to read Cliff Notes of Moby Dick and then tell you that I'm going to rewrite Moby Dick better than the original after only reading the Cliff Notes. I just don't understand the hubris. I don't understand how you don't see how wrong this is. We all do. What's the deal with this elf-and-human romance? Another fucking one. Come on. Tolkien describes the interspecies love triangle in the Hobbit trilogy between Legolas, Tauriel the elf, and Killy the dwarf. Yes, I am. That was an adventure of Peter Jackson's in an effort to add romance. The almost entirely romanceless story of the Hobbit. Okay. But forbidden romances across cultures, though rare in Middle-earth record, are a particular fascination to Tolkien. That is true. Two most famous lovers, Beren and Luthien, as well as Aragorn and Arwen, are human-elf pairings that cross boundaries, divide conventions, be with each other. Yes. Blah, 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 blah. Andreth and Agnor is what makes these special, but these pairings speak to Tolkien's core preoccupation with mortality. Who gets to live forever? Who doesn't? And what would you go out to? Someone you love. So the spark between Ismael Cruz Cordova, his elf Arendir, and Nazanin Banyadi's human Bronwyn. Why did you just... Look. Not every character in Lord of the Rings needs to have made-up names. Have a made-up name. Hobbits are named things like Samwise Gamgee. I mean, Samwise is kind of a made-up name. Sam, shortened to Sam. Rosie Cotton. Rosie. There you go. Bronwyn is one of the main characters' names. That's just a name. If you're Irish, that's like having Susan show up in fucking Lord of the Rings. Fuck's Susan doing in Middle-earth? Yeah, Tauriel was a bullshit made up character. Well, actually, Tauriel, the character I actually really liked, but the love triangle was bullshit. I didn't like that. Tolkien will rise above his grave as Sauron. Yeah, he's fucking about to. Once again, even in this article, they can't make excuses for this shit. They're like, well, the fact that these pairings are so rare is what makes them special. But it doesn't matter because Tolkien was into them, so we'll just throw them in wherever they make sense to us, which is literally everywhere. You're literally writing this shit. The fucking showrunners are like, we understand that the things we're doing are complete desecrations to Tolkien's legacy, but we really, really, really want to be respectful to Tolkien's legacy. That's my tweet. I'm sorry. I can take a moment to tweet this right now. Rings of Power showrunners. Can I type here? Rings of Power showrunners. Nothing is more important to us than upholding Tolkien's, I guess say, Tolkien's. No, I'll toke later. Also, Rings of Power, showrunners. I should say so everyone knows I'm talking about the same ones because we know people on the internet are stupid. Also, the Rings of Power showrunners. We know this completely contradicts Tolkien. Tolkien's legacy. But we just like it better. Let's add a facepalm gift to this one, shall we? Nope. Let's add an epic fail. Facepalm wasn't powerful enough. And I want like epic. I want someone getting hurt. I want a GIF where I know the person in this GIF isn't okay. I don't exactly know what's happening in this not fully resolved. Oh, I think that he just okay. None of these are epic enough. None of these are fail enough. No, none of these are terrible enough. We'll just go with the facepalm, I guess. I'm sorry. Sorry, world, for subjecting you to this. Ooh, there's a Batman facepalm. I'm using that one. Batman's got a facepalm. That's what's up. All right, everyone go like my tweet so that I feel special. Oh, goodness. Where were we? This too shall pass. Excellent name. Thank you for the super chat. Been a minute. San Dimas High School football rules. Dude, we were I think we were Jeff's friend's house. We were flipping through channels and we flipped onto Bill and Ted just in time for that line. Just in time for his San Dimas High School football rules. I don't know why I have so much trouble saying that way, right? Like I can do the like awkward, like I gotta get out, but I also can't like anyway. Brutal impalement? What about the brutal impalement? Watching the trailer for the first time, I just kept saying, oh no, over and over again. My husband was concerned. I don't blame him, Kathleen. I don't blame him. I don't blame you either for your oh-nos. This sounds like a lot of made-up story. What of Tolkien's can one expect? I don't want you to do anything of Tolkien. The truth is, it's all here. We told Amazon we want to do 4 or 5 stories that are the big epics of the Second Age, McKay says, starting with the Forging of the Rings. At the center of its origin is the famed Elvin Smith Celebrimbor and Arameo's younger Elrond. In a region, Elrond was working to rebuild damaged alliances with dwarves, including his old friend Prince Durin IV, who's not even alive yet. We're going back thousands of years when the party was in full swing. McKay says we're going to see the elf capital of Lindon, where Elrond is a young up-and-coming operator within the political scene of the High Elves during their glory days. Lindon, with all its golden autumn leaves and rocky shores, allowed Payne and McKay to expand on the beautiful New Zealand vistas Jackson captured for his film. That is actually kind of cool. They're going back to New Zealand shooting that stuff. We wanted to go to coastlines. McKay says you've never seen the coastline of Middle-earth on screen before. I am actually. That should be cool because I'll bet they'll go to Kaikoura, and Kaikoura is amazing. But there's also, there's so much. Oh God, there's so much prettiness. Anyway, so that is one nice thing to look at. Oh, good. They just reshowed the same picture that we saw earlier because you have nothing creative. As for I just had a moment that I was like, wait, how do we get back to the top of the article? Oh, because you're already recycling stills because you don't have any more. As for reconciling the idea of a young Elrond eager to make alliances with the closed-off version of Hugo Weaving played in the Jackson films, Payne says it's just part of the journey. Elrond, we know from the Third Age is a pretty weak view on humans. He said men are weak because they've seen the foibles of humankind. In some ways, the Third Age is almost post-apocalyptic Middle-earth. The elves have one foot out the door. We're going to watch as Elrond goes from optimistic to a bit more world-weary. This takes thousands of years! It took 12 hours! to simply tell the journey, the saga of the Lord of the Rings. And y'all think you're going to tell thousands of years of history in a satisfying manner in one little TV show. Yeah, I bet you all the kings will be bad guys right from the start. You're right. That's the second big story is the rise of Sauron himself when he was a physical villain. No word might be playing the Dark Lord, more seductive. Yeah, yes, Sauron the Flaming Eyeball was once canonically hot, or in the words of Tolkien himself, fair to the eyes of men. If they do it right, it's the Easter egg phenomenon that people will really like with this kind of stuff. No, it's going to be to see place X or place Y more than person X or Y. I don't want to, though. Speaking of maps, when Amazon's official Lord of the Rings social accounts made their first announcement, they created waves across the Tolkien fandom by posting an image of Middle-earth with a star-shaped island called Numenor. This, Payne says, is the third story on their list, the rise and fall of the island kingdom of Numenor. I don't want this. Tolkien's version of Atlantis is ruled by Aragorn's ancestors, mortals with an extended lifespan that are far more advanced and powerful than those who dwell on the mainland of Middle-earth. Tolkien scholars will know that the complicated clash of the succession of the Numenorean throne between characters Tamiriel and Ar-Pharazôn, the island's last king, will allow Payne and McKay to explore the kind of dangerous palace intrigue that made the best Game of Thrones. So they're just making Game of Thrones. They just told you right here. They literally just told you right here. We're going to track. What's the Game of Thrones opener? Oh, the big map. Literally, the Game of Thrones opener is taking you to all the big spots in the map, the crazy places across the that we're going to show you. And now we're going to take you to all these cool places and show you the political intrigue of Elrond rising up politically, of Numenor and all this shit politically, of the politics, of the corruption of the rings, and the no Aragorn, son of Arathorn, me no Watchy. Well, too young. Also, like, I want him to be there, but I also don't want him to be there. The show has the grace of a dumpster truck with no tires backing up in reverse. Yep. And it's on fire. Don't forget that it's on fire. It's definitely on fire. Oh, God. One of the characters that will follow from this oceanic realm will be Isildur, a young sailor who one day becomes the warrior who slices the One Ring from Sauron's hand, only to succumb to the artifact's power himself. He's not a sailor! He's the heir to the throne of Gondor! Why are we seeing him, by the way? Like, now, the time between the forging of the rings and the fucking fall of Sauron, like... You meet Isildur, and he's like Michael Corleone. McKay says he's the young member of the family who has optimism and immaturity. Trace that guy to the tragic final decision rather than the mistake of a fool. His temptation relationship with his father Elendil is all part of the final story on the list, the last alliance of elves and men. Oh, God. That's... They are literally doing that. They are literally... In one season, wait, all of the stories will unfold over the course of several seasons. But the first season, McKay says, is all about the heroes. We didn't want to do a villain-centric thing. We want to be introducing these worlds, these peoples who dwell. And then, okay. This is like if you took, why is there a giant explosion here? What in Middle-earth costs? The novelty of the black powder that blew up the wall at Helm's Deep was mind-boggling for the people at the time in the third fucking age. No, Morgoth is not in this Azure Night Terror because Morgoth is from the Silmarillion. And they can't use Silmarillion. They only have Lord of the Rings and the appendices and stuff. So they legally cannot use Morgoth at all. So instead, they're basically telling the prequel to the Lord of the Rings that's what they're doing. They're trying to tell They're trying to turn the Second Age of Middle-earth into the prequel for The Lord of the Rings and do it in a Game of Thrones television show. And yes, for some reason, there's a Michael Bay explosion in a place at a time period where literally nothing could even create an explosion like that. I'm clipping this picture and using it as the reason why this is wrong. Why everything is wrong. Have you been hearing any of my yellings?
Oh.
I'm so mad.
I can hear.
I am very, very upset about this. I am so did you hear my first video is going to be, by the way? My very first thing is just going to be dissecting the couple things in this Vanity Fair article where J.D. Payne, the showrunner, is just trying to sound like a pretentious fuck and proving how wrong and ill-suited for this project he actually is. Cool elves don't look explode. What?
The show's going to blow up like that Michael Bay explosion.
Like the Michael Bay explosion behind Galadriel? Because that makes sense for there to be...
I just want to know, with $1 billion behind it, why does it look so shitty?
Hey, Jeff, remember in the Two Towers when that wall blows up? It's that big deal where it's like the black powder, oh my God, and they make a bomb and the orcs bring it in and they blow up the wall. Remember how it's like there's no fire in that explosion. It's literally just like it's just power and the wall sprays and blah. That was the most powerful explosive technology that has ever existed in Middle-earth. So what that we had seen that's weaker than that could produce this explosion? We'll just tilt. You guys will see Jeff.
I've seen this stuff. I'm guessing like swamp dance over Venus.
I guess fucking so.
You're right. That's wrong.
Jesse Evans, vaguely. What is it? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This is.
Here's the thing I hate about all these shows. They don't take the time to think if stuff would work or exist in the world. They go, what's cool? The great part is go, what's cool? And then you go, what's established in Lord of the Rings? It's not hard to do.
You know what I didn't realize? They're condensing the entire Second Age into this one show. So basically...
The movies are in the third, right?
Basically, the movies are in the Third Age. Yeah, late in the Third Age. So, like the end of the Third Age. So basically... And the Forging of the Rings are the beginning of the Second Age.
I made a joke in my video. I'm like, there's only one ring. Like they say in the thing. One ring to rule them all.
So the
people see it's a joke.
So the Forging of the Rings are the beginning of the Second Age. And that's the sort of, that's the, or not the middle of the Second Age. Because Morgoth is the baddie in a lot of the Second Age.
Is that the thing you cut his finger off?
That's Sauron. So that's the end. So, okay, it's kind of like...
The video game, The Two Towers, starts with the end of the first Lord of the Rings, and you watch a clip of that. So I've seen that clip a bunch.
Basically, this show is like, we are going to tell you, Jeff, the lead up to the founding of America, starting with the birth of Jesus Christ. As if Jesus Christ will live to meet George Washington and Christopher Columbus. They will all be alive at the same time over the same few hundreds of years.
That's a great comparison to make, because Jesus died at like 32, and Lincoln, or what's it, 1,776 years later, he's alive.
Dwarves, from what we all disseminated and discussed, and we'll go back into the lore and find out. But we have a couple of other great Lord of the Rings experts here in the chat, so we've been swapping notes a lot on this stuff. And from what we've agreed, a dwarven lifespan is a few hundred years, probably more than 1, but less than 5. According to this, Durin, the king of Khazad-dûm at its height in the Third Age, has been alive since the forging of the Great Rings, some, thousands of years prior. Because what is it? I was there 2,000 years ago, right? When, so it's about 2,000 years from the beginning of the Third Age to the present. So
the present is
the Lord of the Rings era, the Lord of the Rings era, right? Because that's what I was there when man fell. So that's
something. I thought you were talking about something.
No, Isildur I was there 2,000 years. Personally, me, I was there. I'm 2,000 years old. So that thing that you see in the moment where they cut the ring off the hand and he tries to destroy the ring, but he doesn't. That's the end of the Third Age. The Second Age. The Second Age ends with the defeat of Sauron, the ring falling into obscurity, and things sort of settling down and into the slow decline of elves. Elves basically slowly shepherding themselves on, being like, all right, this is man's world now. Goodbye. And we blah. Yeah. And so that already is thousands of years before the events of this. The rings themselves And the forging of the rings and the rise and corruption of Sauron is at least multi hundreds of years, possibly because I think the rings are forged. Or is Morgoth the first age? I thought Morgoth was the first age. That's the fifth. Yeah, and it's the first age is Morgoth is the main in the he's like the biblical bad guy in the founding of Middle Earth, essentially. And then the founding, I thought it was the founding of the rings, the forging of the rings was early in the Second Age, was sort of the part of the beginning of the Second Age. Because the Second Age is all about that corruption. Sauron slowly, essentially, Second Age is in that regard, you could look at the Second Age actually as really being like World War II, and Sauron is Hitler, and that's his expansion, his slow expansion. And the same, but again, with mythical creatures who live for thousands and thousands of years, you're talking about one guy who then forges these. It's like a whole slow, long build to even get to the forging of the rings, to even get to the rise of Sauron, to the fall of Sauron, and all this stuff. So
it sounds like this show doesn't give a shit.
It
sounds like is every other thing. We had the money to buy Lord of the Rings. We can do it with this much because we bought this portion, and then we're going to do whatever we want and make a bunch of money and just.
So they wanted to claim in this interview, J.D. Payne's claiming here that, we really, really wanted to do a lot of on location and practical effects that we weren't able to. And so that was the excuse for why they had to use CGI instead. And so the example they used was, well, we couldn't actually bring our shit into a cave for Cause of Doom, so we built it on a soundstage. And I'm like, that's not an example of how you had to use CGI because you couldn't do the real thing. That's any movie. Exactly. That's literally an example of how you couldn't do the thing exactly the way you wanted it to. So instead you built it 1-to-1 on a soundstage somewhere else. You're just making up reasons why you use CGI because you were too fucking lazy to use it. They even say, oh, the biggest problem we had, you'd be surprised CGI wise, was when we had an elf and a dwarf walk down a hallway together. Because we had to, green screen them and do two separate walks to make sure the frame rate lined up perfectly for the this and that. I'm like, or you could have used forced perspective, not shot them from the waist down, have one of them stand on a raised platform, have the dwarf character stand a little closer so his features would be a little bit bigger, and shoot it in a way that they looked like the appropriate heights without using a bit of CGI.
Didn't you also green screen yourself talking to yourself in a conversation once?
Yeah,
you did it yourself.
Now, for the thing that they are doing, yes, it is annoyingly complicated CGI for them to do the thing they're doing it the way they're doing it. It is infinitely cheaper and easier and fewer steps and less complicated and will yield a less awkward looking result to simply do it with practical effects. Or to there's a million and one different ways you can do it with practical effects, including using green screen, even if you want to, without having to CGI the actors, without having to mocap the actors and adjust. And basically what they're saying is basically the way they didn't use any forced perspective. They just, we mocapped you walking down the hallway, and then we mocapped you walking down the hallway. We made sure you guys had to walk at the exact same pace at the exact same time and line up, blah, 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 so that we could, because the thing that would be the easiest and laziest for us to do in the post is to just shrink you down on the thing, which is going to not look right because, again, when you do the force, part of the value of doing the forced perspective is a dwarf is shorter than everybody else, but they have bigger features. You could stand, if you stand a dwarf and a hobbit, let's say that they're supposed to stand at roughly the same height, but the hobbits are supposed to look very delicate and childlike, whereas the dwarves are burly and thick. All you do, again, you can't shoot their feet, obviously, but you stand them in a place where the dwarf is standing closer to the camera than the hobbit is, and they're standing on platforms so that their heads even out in the eyes of the camera. And then in the eyes of the camera, it will look like, and then you just have them looking. I would look at the wall and the other person would look at the wall like this, as if we were looking at each other. And with the magic of cinema, with shit they've been doing since the camera was fucking invented, it will look like two people of the same height, but one burlier than the other with larger features than the other are standing at the same height looking directly at each other.
So they basically are making it more complicated.
They are making it more complicated for no reason.
Because they have $1 billion to throw Jeff Bezos' money. Jesse, well, real quick, the thing about this show, they'll probably use the $1 billion price tag to sell it, which is ridiculous. Because I go, why does a TV show need to cost $1 billion? What are they putting into this? Because we go see these movies that are 4 hours long that look incredible, And they like $300 million, and they're ridiculously overpriced.
Jeff,
what does 3 times that equal?
In this Vanity Fair interview, one of the showrunners literally claims that the budget was one of the reasons they weren't able to do more on location and practical.
It's $1 billion fucking
$1 billion fucking dollars.
I have a question for that person. Literally, nothing in history has had that budget. What the fuck can't you do? Like, no.
That's where I call bullshit. Because once again, it's also been demonstrated repeatedly that CGI, in most cases, the practical version is cheaper than the CGI version. What you're talking about is not we didn't have the budget for it. It wasn't in the budget. What you're saying is it was too difficult. It was we didn't have the time. We didn't want to put forth the effort. We were too lazy to do it right.
This is the same world as Lord of the Rings, right? So why not go back to the museum?
They did for some stuff.
Then why not then change everything else in the computer to then make that shit look different? It's like you're starting off a plate, then you add stuff onto the plate, and then it makes it a whole different.
That's why I'm scratching my head. Because according to this interview, they went to New Zealand and shot shit on location and tried to do as much of that as humanly possible, which they obviously didn't. Because once again, it's like, don't feed me these lies. When it was important to Peter Jackson to be faithful to Tolkien, he shot on location, and he is my favorite example. I always use one. In Hobbiton, Tolkien very specifically described the types of fruits that were on the trees in Hobbiton. The fruit trees that happened to be growing in the beautiful little sheep farm that Tolkien used for the Shire, or that Peter Jackson chose for Hobbiton, were the wrong fruits. So he stripped off every piece of fruit from those trees and had the wax versions of the correct fruits wired on for shooting. That's how important it was for Peter Jackson to get it right. He spared no expense, time, effort, agony over any detail. It was too hard, so we did CGI. That's the philosophy of this show.
We should pop the song, sir.
We definitely should. I don't think I'm really going to watch the show. I'll like watch clips and look at stills and stuff, but I really don't think I'm going to watch the show.
Jesse, you know how heartbroken I am that we're not watching the show.
Because I said it. Like, real talk, Jeff. If you press 1 in the chat if you agree with me, press 2 if you would keep it the same. If you could go back and have the sequels scrubbed from your memory and never have seen them, and have the choice, if you could go back and have the choice, knowing what you know now, you could choose to go back in time and have never seen them, or have them scrubbed from your memory like you've never seen them, or you could carry on with everything. What would you do?
Star Wars sequels?
And say, let's say from this point, you could have them scrubbed from your memories if you've never seen them, and just not have ever had the experience of seeing them. Everything's the same. All things are the same. Life is the same. Everything's perfect, but you could just have chosen to not have had that. Like, let's say again, take the YouTube out of, take all the success and the stuff that's come from us dunking on it. I'm just saying, take that out of the fact. You personally, as a human being,
no, I didn't need more Star Wars.
Exactly.
Because it ended in 2005. It was perfect with the Clone Wars as a TV show. And coming out every 5 to 10 years with a new release.
With the little spin-off, and even the TV shows like that, the Clone Wars, little spin-offs, little things within the Clone Wars to me is the perfect place where stuff like this lives.
Oh, yeah.
Spin-offs within the universe that don't necessarily try to convince you it's more important than the main story.
Dude, that show built every episode, like, you know, the big points from the movies, but then all they did is fill in the gaps, and then they end at the big point in the movie. Like, I think there's an episode where they verbatim copy Revenge of the Sith. They reshow the opening and then reshow the fight. And that's the point I want to make too. Lord of the Rings and everything, you have to think of the very first thing that was released and consider that the prime element. You can't change anything if it contradicts. Everything has to match that prime element. So everything from this Lord of the Rings show has to retroactively match whatever's in the shit. Same thing when you make a Star Wars sequel or prequel or anything you touch Star Wars. Anything that contradicts the first Star Wars movie has to be removed from the project, because without that prime project, there's nothing else.
I can't tell you how many times I have read a line in this article that's basically Payne saying, yeah, so it's really, really important for us to be faithful to Tolkien's legacy. And we understand that we're not being it. And they don't even they're like, it's just really, really important for us to be totally faithful to Tolkien's legacy. And so here where we're not being faithful to Tolkien's legacy, it's just because we didn't want to be. And we thought it would be better not be. And that's it. That's literally how they're explaining it. That's like straight up. They're like, yeah, so we it's like they're lying to your face that blatantly. It's so important to us, Jeff. It's really, really important. And we didn't do it here, not because it's not important, but because it's not important.
Well, what's great about Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and anything that's adapted in the modern day for people that don't create it, they use the same line of dialogue, and you can snip out the bullshit and how to skip it. This is where when you read somebody tell you this shit, these showrunners you've never heard of, skip a show like this because it's made by dicks that don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Exactly.
You get Get some. You have to. Okay, let me rephrase it. You don't need a name to make a good property in Hollywood. But like when Jon Favreau gets attached to something, I'm gonna go, oh, the guy that really created the MCU and the guy that's done great shit with Star Wars. The guy's a great actor. Random ass person. Well, I believe in this and my identity. The time I was in college and that. Who the fuck cares? I'm gonna trust this dude that's made 50 hours of good shit. Versus you can talk a fucking line of dialogue in Vanity Fair and Variety or wherever you're published, but you don't have the work. You don't have the resume, and you don't have my trust. So I'm not buying it.
Did you know they fired their original Tolkien expert consultant, who's a professor?
He's a white guy?
No, probably because he actually called them on their shit. And you know who their new lore expert is now?
Me.
Well, she's somebody who goes by Bitch Queen of Angmar.
Is that a place in Lord of the Rings, Angmar?
The Witch King of Angmar he's the leader. Nazgul is the Witch King of Angmar.
We don't see the movie, right?
What?
Is he one of those rider things?
Yeah, he's the head of the Black Riders.
Oh, okay, those are cool.
Yep. Hashtag Hobbit musing of the day. In The Hobbit, Gollum is described as dark as darkness. What is this supposed to mean? And yes, I am wondering here about the limits between the metaphorical and the racial.
I thought he was like a fish man.
Apparently he's black now, and apparently that's racist.
No, he's like a brown fish man in the cartoon, and in you obviously read the book, but there's like an old version of the book from like, I don't know, the 60s, where like Gollum's on the cover, he's like a weird fish guy coming out of the water, and Frodo's got his little sword like this. That's the only version of that book I ever read. He's a fish man to me. So
it's funny because we know exactly what, like, I guess we don't know what the hobbits were off doing in the Second Age. According to this, they were harfoots tootling around. But we do know that the direct ancestors of the hobbits, of a hobbit-like race, or not direct ancestors, but we do know that a hobbit-like race that looked like that and was tootling around in their little, happy little, hills and villages.
I just saved our night. Tonight's the night.
What?
Space and animated Lord of the Rings.
Okay, I'm down. I'm in.
Cleanse the palate?
Try. We'll check it out. Dude, cartoon Gollum. Oh, God. My precious. Fucking love it. Yeah, this is, oh, God. It's
the demise of the Lord of the Rings, bro.
I'm so sad. I'm mad. Okay. Here's some more. Here's more. What's up with the warrior? What? No, this was perfect. This is great. Anna had to bounce, so I've been doing this. So if you want to come out here.
When you said there's more, I'm apologizing for your well-being.
Oh, for me. Oh, you're apologizing. I have more of this. Thank you. Oh, God. What's up with warrior Galadriel? Is this in the books? Over the years, Tolkien adapters have had to get creative in order to include his female characters in action. Liv Tyler's Arwen making a riverbank, stand against the Nazgul in defense of Frodo, and the very existence of Evangeline Lyria's Elf Tariel, all invented by Peter Jackson. But Eowyn's "But No Living Man Am I" showdown with the Witch King of Angmar in the Return of the King is straight out of the books, and shows that Tolkien was at least somewhat interested in women who picked up swords, as does his description of Galadriel during many thousands. But that's not why she can kill the Witch King of Angmar, by the way. The Witch King of Angmar, and she's not actually the one who does it. It's actually Mary that does it, because she puts the sword through, because it's the Barrow White sword. But anyway. She was there. All right. Tolkien claimed young Galadriel could match strength with most male counterparts, and in a 1973 letter wrote she was then of Amazon disposition and bound up her hair as a crown when taking part in athletic feats. This is how she got her name Galadriel, which means maiden crown with gleaming hair. In the Unfinished Tales, it says Galadriel looked upon the dwarves also with the eye of a commander, seeing in them the finest warriors to pit against the orcs. She's full of piss and vinegar, and she's got a sword that's broken because she's killed so many orcs, McKay says of their version. This young, hot-headed Galadriel, how did she ever become that elder stateswoman?
Is that Kate Blanchett's character?
Yes. What's more important than Galadriel's armor and weaponry is the turmoil of emotions we see raging inside her, having already survived multiple attacks by Sauron and his predecessor Morgoth, and losing her brothers in the process. This internal conflict still lingers in the striking Fellowship of the Ring sequence, where attempted by the One Ring of booming Kate Blanchett goes photo negative. So, no, once again, wrong. Galadriel's conflict is created by the fact that she's one of the owners of one of the rings of power, and so she is intrinsically directly tied to Sauron's evil. That's canon. Also, just because she's this tough, badass, whatever, like, that doesn't mean she's young and hot-headed. That's like, Because, of course, the only type of woman, obviously, let it be known, is Lando eating from the right bowl.
Oh, Lando.
Lando!
Lando. Off, Lando. Come on, buddy.
He's like, what did I do? And everyone else leaves like, this is my food. Lando's eating from the wrong bowl. And yes, however, I did hear they're making an anime, Lord of the Rings, something about the Rohirrim, the Riders of Rohan. The original, like the original battle where the Helm's Deep was built and all that stuff, and has nothing to do with the Amazon show. So,
Did you hear the Amazon has another show? They have an animated boys coming out.
Why?
No.
So do this is national okay. Yeah, so just wrong. The Rings of Power makes a direct nod towards this moment when Galadriel first meets the human character Halbrand. He says a line that echoes what Tolkien says to her. Had her say to Frodo, the tides of fate are flowing in or out. Halbrand wonders and in or out. Oh, great. I'm so glad that they love to do this. This is this thing they love to fucking do. Oh, that line that Galadriel says in The Lord of the Rings, well, she totally got it from this character that we made up right here, right now. It's all this shit of we're so much more important than you.
They're Maz Kanata. Because remember, they're writing a character that has no connection to these important elements. Oh, that's a story for another time.
No, there's all this shit. Like, exactly.
I wish they would understand we're attached to more than just the world and the basic superficial stuff. All of these. They're missing the points. These characters, these things. Knowing too much about your favorite character ruins it. Demystifies them. Learning where Han Solo got his name ruined the character. Learning that Luke Skywalker gave up and quit because he failed one time ruined the character. All this shit's stupid.
I have a question, Jeff.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to know if you were a good enough writer to follow in the footsteps of one of the greatest linguists to ever live, would you tell them that you're totally qualified because you know what a simile is when you read a poem?
It bothers me that the person working on the show has been quoted as saying that.
He didn't. He said, I studied Hebrew poetry and parallelism and reverse parallel or inverse parallelism and chiasmus. Those are just parallelism is when you write two verses of poetry, one on top of the other, so they have the exact same meter. Inverse parallelism is when you write two verses of poetry on top of the other, so they have the exact opposite meter. Chiasmus is a weird literary poetry device that you wouldn't use that Tolkien never would have used because it's only used in verse, where you flip the syntax of a clause so that if you were to draw lines between the matching syntax pieces from one to the other, it would draw an X because the word chiasmus literally means X. So there's also a way to do it in poetry too, where there's a retarded way you can do it in poetry too, where it's like, oh, you do the wrong ending. Oh, fuck. Now I just remembered how it's actually used in fucking Virgil's poetry. The way it's used in Virgil in the Aeneid is where it's like, okay, so we took an adjective and a noun, let's say. And then in the next sentence, in order to create chiasmus, where a relative adjective and noun also exist, we flipped the ending so it seemed like we wrote the adjective as the noun and the noun as the adjective. But when you read it, you're supposed to understand somehow intuitively that this is actually the adjective and this is the noun because you can see the chiasmus. You can see the pretty X it makes if you track the endings back to the line above. That's all that is. It's literally like it's alliteration. It's like it's a visual version of alliteration. It's like, I totally am qualified to do this because I understand that if I put a C at the beginning of every word in this sentence, that it'll sound pretty.
No.
And so that's what I want to make my first video on, is breaking down this guy who's like, yeah, and my Hebrew poetry and my parallel, and like literally just dissect what he's actually saying to prove how fucking stupid he is. Because it's like, yeah, I know about fishing and tackle boxes, lines, hooks, fish, tails, scales, gills, blood and fish knife, sailboat, boat, place you prepare the fish on, tackle box, stuff in your tackle box, worms. I learned that stuff. I learned all about that stuff. That makes me an expert fisher, you know. Bun seeds, no bun seeds. Sweet and sour sauce on my pussy.
Drive through now. Sauce.
Sauce.
Her way.
That's our motto. It's come on, sauce. Okay. I don't care if she's a good enough actress. I don't care. I really don't. Okay, but will there be wizards? In the footage that premiered in the Rings of Power Super Bowl teaser, audiences caught a glimpse of a tall, mysterious man who falls from the sky. Our immediate instinct is to wonder if he's one of the wizards, even the most casual fans might have heard of. In Tolkien's text, they didn't come to Middle Earth until the Third Age. But the show is taking some added liberties with it. But is the show taking some added liberties with the timeline? Yes! You already established that absolutely the show is taking a lot of fucking liberties with the fucking timeline. Ah, McKay answered cautiously. All right. When it asked if this might be Gandalf, Radagast, or Saruman, McKay answered cautiously, well, I would say those are not the only beings, those names in that class. So maybe, but maybe not. And the mystery and the journey of it all is the fun, I would say. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. What is known for certain is that this Mystery Man story connects to the Harfoot character, Nori Brandyfoot. I already explained, Jeff, by the way, why etymologically Brandyfoot is wrong, because it's the cross of another class. Proudfoot is one we know of. I'm sure there could be other something foots who are definitely Harfoots, because you would always have foot in it. But Brandybucks and the Brandy preface is very distinctly a fallowhide name. And especially when we're talking about the evolutionary ancestors who definitely haven't mixed yet, you wouldn't have a surname that already blended those two lineages. And you might say, well, that's not important and that's stupid and who cares? Tolkien is who cared, because he wrote this shit into his works on fucking purpose for a reason. And I'm just not, I think that's been the case for me, and why I loved Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, and why I can't stand this is I'm just not interested in watching something that doesn't that doesn't care as much as Tolkien would. Proud feet. Thank you. That bothers me. Fucking Brandyfoot. Harfoots have rules that you're not supposed to engage with the big folks. So that's another thing too, where it's like, I don't like that. I don't like this thing. Let's bastardize. There's no rule among the hobbits to not engage in the big folk. They're just extrapolating though. Let's make it a rule by extrapolating the tendency from the Shire folk to avoid the big folk, not because they don't like them or it's a rule or they hate them or they won't talk to them, because they don't trust them. And because they don't think they're worried they'll compromise their way of life and they have no need of them. Not because they have fucking rules that say we don't talk to big folk. We hide in the fucking... This is so fucking stupid. So should fans be worried? Yes! Abso-fucking-lutely! Especially after reading this interview. Fans will always be worried that's the nature of adapting something beloved as the enduring as the Lord of the Rings. McKay and Payne can relate, but it's important to remember that Tolkien himself envisioned a number of different people telling stories in his world. But people who would tell stories set in his world, not people who wanted to rewrite an entire age of his universe. In his letter to Milton Wallen, it's a letter that says he wanted to create an interconnected mythology that would still leave room for, quote, other minds and hands wielding paint and music and drama. He wanted other artists to come after him and continue to push the boundaries of expanding what Middle-earth could be. It's a terrifying but awesome responsibility to take the man himself up on his wish and continue his work building out in Middle-earth. But you're not doing that! You're just changing what he already did. You're just retelling, but worse and wrong, the stories he already told. You even admitted that. You even admitted that you're mining every little bit of canon that you had access to develop your ideas, missing entirely the point of Tolkien's own words, which is that anybody can create something brand spanking new in his universe, a new character with a history and a world and a story that is not in any way connected or related to what Tolkien wrote. Tolkien didn't say that he wanted any fucker and their mom to come and change and revise his history. He said that anybody should feel inspired to play around in his world, to create a Hobbit-like adventure for another character, not to rewrite, revise, and shrink thousands of years of history into one trite little fucking TV show. As noted above, Peter Jackson took many liberties with Tolkien's text, and though not all were well received, many, like Aragorn's reluctance to be king, have become inextricably linked with some people's understanding of Tolkien's characters. We've been given something as Stewardship. Payne says people have been in Middle-earth before us, wonderful artists who have brought Middle-earth to life in a variety of different mediums and different ways. People will be here after us, but right now we are the ones who have been given this torch to carry and work alongside Tolkien himself in a very real way. Peter Jackson didn't invent Aragorn's reluctance to be king. Well, he expounded upon Aragorn's disinterest in accepting the stature of his field. He expounded upon Aragorn's not feeling like he was worthy of accepting the crown, and which was why he had gone off to be a ranger all of this time. But once he gets brought back into the time, like in the books, Aragorn holds stronger, like. In the movies, they present him as a guy that just totally fucked off and would have continued fucking off unless all this shit had happened. In the books, he's a guy that fucks off, but always knows that at some point he's going to be called to his destiny. That's, to me, I want to know more of this War of the Rohirrim story, but to me, that's what Tolkien meant when he said, tell stories in my universe. Oh, the War of the Rohirrim, that leads, what Helm's Deep was built for, the big stand at the impenetrable fortress in the founding of Rohan. That's a great story that that Tolkien himself has never delved into. So what a great fucking story to tell. That kind of shit. That's where I'm interested. That's where you got my interest. That's where I'm intrigued. That's where you're doing it correctly, though. And it's so obvious to me, and it's so difficult for everyone else to do this. I'm so disappointed. As a person who was inspired to create fantasy entirely because of Lord of the Rings, as somebody who still has a fantasy epic that I would like to create in my lifetime, I have never once felt that I was worthy of creating a truly canon story in Middle-earth. I used to write fan fiction in I used to write fantasy stories. I used to do exactly what Tolkien said and write fun little fantasy stories that existed in Middle-earth between, my characters and whatever and things like that. And it was for fun. It was because it's for fun, for imagination. And never in my lifetime would I have ever, if anyone had ever asked me, hey, do you want to do a Lord of the Rings show? Do you want to write a Lord of the Rings show? I'd be like, I don't know if I'm the right person for that, because I'd like, bring me one. If you have one written and done, I'm your director. Absolutely. I'm absolutely the person who will bring this to life faithfully, to the source. But I've never personally felt like I had the right, not the right even, but not even the chops, but just like, it's not, I never felt personally tapped by the cosmos to be a successor to J.R.R. Tolkien. Let's put it that way. And yet these fuckers are acting like they were, and yet don't even care. Like they're talking, like literally there. Like, I mean, the last words there are, well, we're the ones tapped to work alongside him to keep his legacy alive. Like, no, you're not. You fucking chose to be. Like, Tolkien didn't pick you. Tolkien's estate, like nobody that matters to Tolkien's estate gives a shit of your involvement. Those people are dead. Tolkien and Christopher, they're fucking dead. Sorry. And there's that, and there's nothing wrong with it. And that's the thing, is if Amazon wants to say we made Lord of the Rings fan fiction, I got no problem with it. But and I've read tons of Lord of the Rings fan fiction that I think is great too. But there's also a huge difference between people being like, I want to write in this universe, I want to play around in this universe, create stories in this universe, and let me just do a redo of the Second Age for regular people, because Tolkien didn't really do it right in the Silmarillion, so never mind that we can't even touch that at all. He didn't really tell his own history right, so we're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it for him. It just makes me sad.
It does. I don't know what they're talking about.
Oh, it's very disappointing. Well, that's. If you guys aren't done hearing me rage, I did put up a video raging about sports ball, and the fucked up NFL referee calls in the Super Bowl. Like I said, I think my Lord of the Rings take might go up on Friday, because I think I'm raged out for the day. I actually don't know if my voice could handle doing another video right now. Although I may just clip a couple of the rants from here, repost them. But thank you guys for listening. Please do stay tuned. Like I said, there's a sports ball rant up to Taiji for now, and there is the replay of this if you're hungry for any of that. And Friday, our meeting is Friday. Okay. I can do that. I should be able to do that, Andy. Thank you. I'm glad that you guys went ahead and just figured that out. So yeah, that's also a great question. This is the point that Anna makes, right? Or that Anna made a meme of, where it's like, the Uruk-hai, they were once, and orcs, they were once elves that got corrupted, and this. And Roberto Sabato, welcome, new subscriber. I'm glad you found me too. It's nice to have you here. And the meme is the black elf and then the Uruk-hai, and it's like, you guys are setting yourselves up for a lot of the so all the black elves became the bad guys, I guess. And now everyone wants to know where is, because we have book canon and we have movie canon that has a admittedly very whitewashed world. But now that you're inserting all these characters into the Second Age, where's this great where's the genocide? Because at some point all of these wonderful rainbow people that exist in Middle Earth get wiped out before Lord of the Rings. So I guess maybe they all die in Sauron's existence. Okay, I'll go check the time, Andy, and find that out. Anyways, so that's all. Thank you guys once again. Dagobah, I will check that one out. I did know that one existed, but I haven't read it yet. But I will check it out. Thank you guys for being here, for engaging, for loving all of the fun. Thank you, Judge Mikey Jesus, for the last super chat of the day. Sports ball sucks. Rally racing for the win. I like my sports ball, but take your rally racing. Power to us both. And until next time, guys, practice makes wrong.